And we are back, episode 213, Adir, live in person, as we love it.
It's very nice.
You're looking
very
resplendent.
good.
You've had a big couple of days. Catapult technology just powering the World Cup.
That's pretty cool, huh? Well, we can start off by saying the Socceroos. That's unbelievable.
Catapult's own Socceroos.
Well, I think we made the smallest possible contribution you could make on game day, would be my guess.
Shouldn't you do the patriotic thing and not allow Catapult technology to be used by any other country other than Australia? Wouldn't that be a bit of a donation to the Australian people?
I do the shareholder-friendly thing. I try to encourage Catapult being used by everyone. Well, we all want fewer injuries. No one wants injuries in their players.
But think about the benefit for Australia if Australia's the only team that had that technology.
It doesn't
could actually win the World Cup.
We want to win fair and square. We don't want to win by every other team getting injuries. That was incredible. I mean, there would be a few people in Australia that have no interest in the World Cup. But I think
there'll be a lot of people.
I think even if you're not really interested in sport, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of
we saw
World
with the Matildas
Cup.
2 years ago how big that was.
But I think for people that don't follow soccer at all, it's hard to understand how dramatic it was that Australia didn't lose against Turkey.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they've got a striker they've got a midfielder who's
Real Madrid, right?
He's one of the greatest young players in the entire world. And we just are not that good.
Yeah.
And we're young. And we just...
I hadn't heard, I'm not clearly not a big soccer guy. I knew Matt Ryan, who actually couldn't get a game, but I didn't know anyone else.
The names are very unfamiliar to me. And I thought it was pretty... I'm going to do it slightly technical, but I'm not exactly a soccer maven, let's be super clear. But it was pretty obvious from the way they set up the structure that they were going to try to play this game, which is we're just going to defend the hell out of it and try and kick a ball forward and counter attack, which is a pretty good strategy against the better... Yeah. That's a good life strategy against the better. Catch people off guard if they're much more capable. Yeah. Exactly. It's the perfect counter positioning, right? And so it worked. I can't believe they fell for it. And I feel like, it was a great game. And I think Turkey's a great team. And, the league in Turkey, it's a really high quality league. I mean, it's not the Premier League, but it was a very great, exciting moment.
I was the bandwagon will start to roll on.
Hopefully.
We saw it. I remember in 2006 when we made the World Cup for the first time since 72. I knew every single player. I obviously followed our journey through that famous John Aloisi penalty kick to get us into the World Cup. But I don't think this was such a low profile. All we heard about was how expensive the tickets were. I heard virtually nothing else about this World Cup other than FIFA's been corrupt and tickets prices are $2,000 each.
Well, the thing about these once every 4 year sporting events is no one cares about whitewater kayaking between the Olympics. But when Jess Fox goes and wins gold medals, everyone knows everything about whitewater kayaking for 15 minutes. I'm all right with it. You know who hated not the World Cup in particular, but this idea of countries competing. It was George Orwell. George Orwell thought that stimulated hatred amongst different cultures.
Probably not a terrible point.
And he did not like it at all. He did not like... It was very allergic to nationalism.
All the world wars have happened since the modern Olympics. There was no world war before that.
Well, there were wars before that. There were little
skirmishes here and there.
I'm not sure the people involved would have called them little, but but there were some big wars between empires before the Olympics. But I think he wrote an essay called Notes on Nationalism.
He tends to get stuff right, George.
I'd commend it. He was a maniac. We should point that out.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a maniac. He's I don't know. We can have long chats about him, but I think his writing is incredible and his prescience is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But as you know, when it comes to contrarians, he was the ultimate contrarian. Yeah. You have to be slightly nuts in order to see the world for what it is, as opposed to just rolling with it and seeing it for... Well, we talk about that all the time, right? I mean, at some point we're going to talk about SpaceX, and you can tell me if that's seeing the world for what it is or what it isn't. Do you know what I did yesterday? I'll tell you what I did yesterday. I got a very exhausting insight into the state of the Victorian/Australian economy, because I went out and spent the entire day in the sales, in the end of financial year sales for furniture and other things. No, I went to suburban Melbourne. Look, when I say suburban, I was looking at various types of furniture and other things. Yep. And so I went to kind of the strips, and this is what I saw. It was very eye-opening. So I went north of the Yarra.
Wow.
which
Not
is
common for a Contrarians
got some
member.
nice
Yeah.
stores, which
Well,
I'd
Mike,
say is
obviously, but yeah.
I'd say is like
Like, you live north of Yarra, technically?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
but more
I went
west.
there, which is like the inner west of Sydney, would be how I would describe it,
Yeah.
kind of.
Like you went to like Footscray or something like that?
That was west, not north of the
Oh,
Yarra.
okay.
That's to the around the Yarra, kind of.
What's not like Fitzroy or something
yeah,
like that?
Fitzroy and that kind of area,
Yeah.
right? And so I was looking at furniture stores, and there was a lot of buzz and activity, and people buying stuff from very expensive fashion stores, and cafes pretty full.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So definitely that kind of young people spending money. That was young, predominantly young people.
Yeah.
That was all powering along.
Yeah.
Then I went south of the Yarra to like the furniture shopping strip in Richmond, a kind of Cremorne area.
Yeah.
And so I checked out the EVA store because it's up in
Oh, it's EVA store
Carlton.
there?
Yeah, and like it was quite busy. I mean, it was a World Cup Sunday.
I've got a
so-
fantastic Eva bed, as our listeners know. Highly recommend.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You can talk about that whenever you want.
Yeah.
And so then I went into the south, into like,
So
the
comfortable.
main
You like it gets
furniture strip.
almost envelops you.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. That's very lovely. I'm sure the founders will be very excited
Yeah.
about that. And so this is what I saw south of the Yarra. So you know this store, Cocoa Republic?
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So it's a very interesting business because it built up its brand over 30 years to be quite premium.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't love their stuff, but like it's premium
Yeah.
stuff. Then they got bought either at the end of COVID or during COVID by a private equity
really?
business. I remember
How
looking
big
at
were
the
they?
IM. I'm going to say they were, I can't remember. They were not massively profitable before COVID, but a bit profitable, and maybe their
Yeah.
revenue would be 100 mil, give or take.
Okay.
So, and they've got stores
Yeah.
and like they've got a loyal following. And what I've noticed since private equity has bought them is they seem to be much more on sale. You know, the old buy the brand, milk it kind
Yeah.
of. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it just anecdotally to me, it feels like it. And so they were heavily on sale. That store was packed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could not move around in that
Oh,
store.
wow.
Like they were absolutely pumping, but almost no other store on Church Street, Richmond, which is like the furniture centre
Yeah.
of Melbourne. Almost no other store was very busy. And I was talking to everyone about this, like what was going on, and people have said, you know, sales have started earlier for end of financial year.
Yeah.
So they started at the end of May, some of them. And the first week or two that people are on sale, there's a lot of
Yep.
store traffic. But basically it was pretty dead, to be honest. And the weather was quite good.
Yeah.
And so I think that definitely there's a lot of deferral of, like there's browsing, but deferral
Well,
of
people
purchases.
obviously stop buying properties, so that's a big driver
Yeah.
of furniture purchase.
So people have stopped buying and they're not yet in the... So property's in a funny place because the market is not meeting. So people that have properties on the market, they're not dropping their prices to meet the market reality.
Yeah.
People that are buying, they've already adjusted to the market reality.
Yeah.
And so the transactions are not going through, which means you're not getting people moving, which hurts sales. And you're not getting people saying, okay, we're not going to move. We're going to invest more money in our primary residence and upgrade. So you're not getting, I think we might be at the low point for, it's a long sentence, but like, consumer durable goods discretionary spend. I think we might be at the low point right now, although there is a pretty high chance we go into a recession after this
I wouldn't
budget.
Be calling, I wouldn't be calling it low just
but
yet.
we might be if you look at like Nick Scali's share price, like it's pretty low on a price to earnings basis compared to the historical average. So I think we might be at a bit of a low point with that stuff.
Yeah. Can I talk about a couple of things? Have you seen the new at the airport outside the Qantas terminal, in the Qantas terminal in Melbourne?
Pretty rare that I fly Qantas.
Oh, because you're by Virgin. But as you know, I've been a persistent critic of Victoria's criminal taxi organisation. How basically a good percentage of taxi drivers just effectively running a criminal enterprise where they don't charge you what the meter says, or they cook the meter, or they charge us whatever they want to charge, or they demand $100 to go 2 kilometres, or whatever they do. So the airport have, and this presumably in association with Cab Charge or 13 Cabs, whatever it's called now, have put these machines in where you get a ticket, you put your address and you get a ticket. And it tells
a lot of the world works like that.
everywhere else, but obviously it doesn't help the criminal enterprise in Victoria. So they withheld it as long as I think they eventually. Oh, we've got to do something. So actually, and they have the Uber things if you don't have a Uber app, and they have the 13 Cabs thing if you want 13 Cabs. And the Qantas taxi Uber bit is like at the very end. So the Uber flow is terrible. So even though it's way quicker to walk there, you end up waiting for ages for it. It doesn't really work. So I was with the kids. We were on the way from Gold Coast, or came back from Gold Coast, and there was And the guy comes up, and it was an official guy, and he goes, "Oh, do you want me to get a taxi?" It wasn't a dodgy taxi, and really good actually. He's like, credit to Melbourne Airport for that. And I said, "Oh, let me just check." I was playing around with the machine. Went to one machine because the machine's a great idea because it stops that rorting. One machine didn't work. Second machine didn't work, and the third machine had like 4 people there. So the machines are completely. So the best of best laid plans. We're going to stop this rorting. We're going to put these machines. They couldn't even get the machines to work. These idiots. That's how incompetent this business is.
Because they're new, right?
They've been there for, I reckon, 3 or 4 months. Like they weren't here yesterday. They just were broken. Like the one didn't attach to the like credit card reading machine. So like you get it in, told you the price was $97 or whatever it is, but the credit machine didn't work. They couldn't pay, and the other one just didn't even get that far.
My view is that most things are politicized. That would be my view on that. Like, I don't think that's maintenance issues.
This is incompetence. I can't get it right.
Well, you think it's incompetence. Generally, it's me that tells you that it's incompetence. It's not nefarious.
I don't think this was a Labor, One Nation operative cooking the machine.
I think the industry is powerful, and I think that lots of people would be quite happy that those machines were not working. I think there'll be no rush to fix those machines.
Interestingly, I actually found the only honest cab driver in Victoria, I reckon. So this guy comes up.
You know what? This is the
probably
question.
Are
there is there 5% who are dishonest?
No, I think it's probably 50% dishonest. I think there's a big chunk who are dishonest, but there's clearly some honest ones.
I never catch taxis.
Because they're all dishonest. You don't want to get ripped off.
That's not why. Because I think...
you got a Rolls Royce.
I like the accountability of going into an app. It's
called Jeeves.
You know what? I'll tell you what's changed over the last 3 years in our relationship. I found it easier to know when it's good to ignore you. So I just find with the app, the accountability of the Uber app
absolutely
is, and I say Uber, there's not really much else to use. Like I don't really use the other apps here, but that's why I use it predominantly.
Yeah, but problem is sometimes Uber just takes too long. So, but the Uber cost is also cheaper. So just as a comparison, I could have got a normal sedan Uber for $70. Could have got a maxi Uber for like $92. That cab machine said 97. Last time I took a cab, the guy was a criminal. He charged me 130 or something. Remember I complained about it on the pod. So clearly that guy was just a criminal. So this guy came really quickly, had a maxi cab as well. It was 4 of us. And I said, last time I took a cab, the guy charged me $130. You're not charging what? The machine's not working. You're not charging me 130. He goes, no, the machine actually overstates it. I would be less than the machine. I said, sure, because the last guy was 130 and you were a maxi cab. He goes, yeah. I'm thinking, this guy's like all the other ones. Anyway, I get there, it was $91. So this guy was the only honest cabbie in Melbourne. He could have charged way more. The other criminal charged 130 and wasn't a maxi cab. So this poor guy has done the right thing, and his good name's being besmirched by all these criminals like roaming the streets in taxis.
So can I just tell you something that I'm not sure if you're unaware of this, but do you know you can book a car, quite a nice car, and it will wait for you when you come out at the airport.
Yeah.
And it will cost you, I know where you're going home to, it will cost you maximum $100.
Yeah.
Maximum.
I just never get around
and
to
probably less.
Yeah.
You just got to find one person. I'll give you a guy, okay?
Have you got a guy?
I'll give you a guy. He'll wait for you. It'll be cheaper than catching a taxi.
Yeah.
Honestly, it will be. It'll be cheaper than a taxi.
I've been meaning to do this for years.
And then we'll lose 10 minutes of every
What about
podcast of content.
Think about the pod.
I tell you I never talk about Uber, but just not to give them too many props, 'cause, like I recently went home and I went in a Hezbollah Uber because when I was driving home, I was not really having a conversation with the driver, but he felt very compelled. I could tell his accent. He was chatting me a bit, and I'm like, I think this guy's from Lebanon.
Yeah.
And so he said that, and I'm like, where are you from, etc. And then he started, that was a mistake, frankly. I certainly didn't tell him I was Jewish. My name is not my name on the Uber app.
Really? Use a different name?
I have to use a different name. You know how many times I've been lectured about Palestine if I use my name? I'm not interested in that. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so, in a closed car with someone like abusing you anyway, it's horrible. So I changed my name, and he was basically gave me a 25-minute long dissertation about why Hezbollah is not a terrorist group, why the Australian politics is not really a democracy. And then I stupidly engaged and asked him, and I said, well, what about the Muslim voice in Western Sydney? That feels like, that's part of democracy, and it didn't win, but they got lots of votes. And he said to me, that was just a facade put on by the Liberal and Labor Party to make it look like Muslims have a voice. At which point I thought, you can't argue with conspiracists.
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere to go. So that was not the most.
Can I speak? Did you see there was a Fair Work Commission case? And I've talked about the Fair Work Commission before, but
most of the Fair Work submissions now is
AI-driven.
AI slop.
Yeah, but this was. Did you see the Uber decision in the Fair Work last week?
No.
It was a horrendous decision. So basically, Uber And so the Dim Jim Albanese government last year did a policy basically to strengthen the rights of gig economy workers. Of course, this always ends up weakening the rights because they don't get hired as much. So as a result of that legislation, a gig economy worker took action against Uber.
You have to get super, I think, as a gig economy worker.
There's other stuff as well. But so basically what happened is that a bunch of complaints have been made about this dodgy Uber driver, and there must be lots of them out there. And one of the complaints was someone took a photo of him going 119 kilometres an hour in 100 zones, so very unsafe. Yeah. Obviously illegal, very illegal. Should be actually lose a license for that. But and there's like multiple complaints. And then you think Uber should be able to get rid of this guy from the platform simply in the interest of safety of customers is the most important thing. It's not a labour or liberal or rights thing. This is like a human rights safety issue. And the Fair Work Commission said, no, Uber couldn't get rid of this guy. This is just there wasn't enough evidence, or the evidence wasn't clear enough, or effectively they wanted to strengthen the rights of gig workers. I thought this seems like a ludicrous decision. Like no sensible person. Because you literally have people who start sexually assaulting customers driving Ubers, and Uber can't get rid of them. So we're not looking after our 17-year-old girls. We're looking after these rapists. So who was the the commissioner who did this? Someone called Un Thi Tran. You'll be shocked to know that good old Un Thi Tran previously worked at the TCFU and the CFMMEU and was an employment and discrimination lawyer. So who would have thought a far left appointee of the Labor government has given a far left decision that endangers young girls?
Can you
and
appeal
people?
the Fair Work?
Yeah, it will be appealed.
Where
for
does
sure.
it go
Uber's
to?
appealing it for sure.
Supreme Court.
Probably the federal court.
Federal court. Oh yeah, because it's federal legislation.
Yeah.
Well,
and then eventually the High Court.
That's fun. Listen to this. So I never really speed. I mean, that's not true. Like when they changed the laws in suburban areas to 50 from 60.
And now 40.
On an 8-lane highway.
Yeah.
Then I probably don't drive 50. But generally I'm very opposed to speeding. And so I got a speeding ticket in the mail, which really shocked me.
I got a speeding ticket as well.
So how fast do you think I was going? On my, you have to, Mike, you tell me how fast you think I was going for my speeding.
You're in a 60 zone?
I'm not telling you what I mean. You guess.
Well, I'll say 55 in a 40 zone.
One of us is asking the questions. How far?
45 in a 40 zone.
So I was going 49 kilometres an hour.
I was going 47.
And what day of the week were you going 47?
Thursday.
So I was going 49 on a Saturday at 2:45.
Well, Saturdays are busier than...
No, but I'll tell you where I was.
School zone?
Well, I don't think kids go to school on a Saturday, do they?
Yeah.
As far as I know. So there are no school zones on a Saturday. I'll tell you where I was. People from Melbourne will know. I was on Fitzroy Street near Lakeside Drive. There were no human beings in that area.
Oh, there's a speed camera and there's a red light camera there as well.
Well, but you know...
Pure revenue raising for Dan's productivities.
So this is the thing. And so I thought about this. I mean, I didn't feel very...
That should no way be 40 as well, that street.
Oh, well, yeah.
Double lane, both directions.
You've convinced me. But like, but I thought I wasn't really angry about it. But I did think to myself, it was $245. That would be very painful for a lot of people.
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
Very painful. And then I started...
That's like almost a week's wages after tax for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
After tax.
No, it's not.
If you're
a week's wages after tax, $245.
Well, not everybody earns $400,000 like you.
$245. No, it's not.
So it's $500. We'll call it $400 after tax. Like
Well, it's not because you're not getting charged 50% tax if you're on that wage.
Certain people are.
All right. Anyway, we'll say it's a material amount of money.
It was a good couple of days' work.
So first I felt angry at the police, and then I realised I shouldn't get angry at them. Like they're being prevented from doing police work to have to raise money for the government. And my view is this. Basically...
in a highly aggressive way, of course.
Yeah, like, do you agree? I mean, this is a ridiculous question to ask you, but like, the police are being used to raise taxes for a government deeply in debt. That is one of the primary responsibilities of the police force now. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I find it shocking.
Well, they're not there to enforce crimes because criminals are wandering the streets with gay abandon, so it's clear that's not their job.
And being let back out on the streets if they're young. And so what I thought was...
toughest job you can have of being a police officer.
So what I thought is an unusual dynamic is this. The speed limits are often set by the local council, and then they have to be enforced by state police. So weird dynamic, right?
Yeah. And it's bizarre that councils, given they're so unqualified, should be setting anything like this.
You find councils are dominated by
the far left.
The least, like they're meant to be apolitical. They've been captured by the left.
That's always been the case.
They're run by, you go into a local municipality and you say, give me the 5 least capable people that live in that municipality. They get voted onto council.
The odd one, you get the odd normal person on council,
No,
but they're the
that's what I'm
exception, not
saying.
the rule.
They're controlled by, and then you get good, well-intentioned people that say, I just want to make things better for people, like, for example, collect their garbage and not charge them extra for collecting their garbage. And they have no power. They end up leaving council.
I don't blame them. I get frustrated and leave.
So crazy. Let me ask you, I've got two one-question quizzes.
I've got a little one-question quiz for you as well.
This is the quiz. You can't get this quiz wrong. It's a perfect quiz for you. So this is the following question. It's 4 a.m. Would you prefer to be waking up or going to sleep? I know your answer.
It's not really a quiz.
Your answer's waking up.
Obviously.
It's a quiz because it's a one question. You just can't get it wrong. It's perfect.
Yeah.
You're waking up.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Going to sleep.
Going to
Really?
sleep, Joel?
No way.
That's really tough. I would say waking up.
You get up at like
Would you?
6:30, Mike. So what, you're going to go to bed and get up 2.5 hours later? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, he's going to sleep in on that day. I can tell you, it's like for you, that's the easiest answer you've ever given.
And for you-
me, it's the easiest answer I've ever given.
Obviously polar
Like,
opposites.
I can tell you, on the very few occasions I've ever woken up at 4 a.m., was hoping that I wouldn't wake up at all and they would just bury me. And but I've often gone to sleep at 4 a.m. So that's I think that question, if you want a question that really tells you the core of a human being, you ask them that question.
It's a good question.
It's 4 a.m. Would you rather be waking up or going to sleep?
Yeah.
This is
I think the interesting point is, where is that point for you? Like, where is the point where it flips?
You're 11 p.m.
No, as in, probably more like so my point is the choice where you, that pivot point where you go from waking to not waking. Probably for me, it's probably 3:30 a.m.
Is it? I would thought it was 11 p.m. I would have thought anything after 11, you would rather.
I don't want to wake up at 11 p.m.
No, 1 a.m.
No, I don't wake up.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Yeah,
Right. You'd rather go to sleep.
What's
at 1 a.m.
what's that pivot point?
Oh, so it's only up by half an hour for you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised to hear
Because
that.
at 3 o'clock, then you're only having really 4 or 5 hours. It's too short.
My number would be 5:30.
Yeah, Mike, your number?
For what, sorry?
Oh,
What
do I?
It's because you're focusing intently on the content of this pod.
There should be a jar. There should be a jar here, and it's like
No, but
one coin goes in. That's how much you lose in pay
I was
every
going to
episode.
say, I think the question is weird because
Don't criticise the question you weren't
depends-
listening
Got
to.
lots of views on the question.
No, the whole
today.
thing depends on the context. Like, why am I up at 4 a.m. anyway?
It's
like,
5
have I
o'clock.
been at a big party, a concert?
Mike, shh. It's 5 a.m. You're
No, he was
alarm-
4. He was up at 4. So
No,
he
no,
just
said
I'm
4.
trying to help him with the answer to your question.
Yeah.
It's 5 a.m. Would you rather be waking up or going to sleep at 5 a.m.?
No, but you got to go from 4 and backwards because he already said
No,
4.
let's go 4. I think I might get him forwards.
No, that wasn't my, you wasn't that's my
5:30.
question as well.
No,
I'd still rather be going to sleep at
Yeah, because
5 a.m.
it's
What about-
3:30 is my, like, where do you draw the line? Where's your point is the question.
I actually don't know. I
If
feel
you'd
like I'm
rather
really
be-
on the
it
spot
makes
here.
Your question makes no sense.
It makes perfect
If
sense.
you would rather be waking up at, if he'd rather be going to bed at 4
Yeah.
than waking up at 4,
Yeah.
why would he rather be waking up at 3:30?
No, as in
It has to go
what's-
forward.
No, but I'd rather be 4. So there is a point. I'd also rather go, like, Will, do you understand my question?
Waking up, I reckon I never want, this might help. I will never want to be waking up earlier than 6 if I can help it.
No, but if you have the choice between waking up or going to sleep, what's worse? 3:30? Would you rather be going to sleep or waking up at that time?
Going to sleep.
Okay, so your point is about 3:45 then.
Okay.
Will, what's your
No, his point's on 3:45.
He was at 4, he was waking
he'd rather
up.
Be, no, he said going to sleep. Oh, this
No,
is
you
where
were
it went.
waking up- oh, so
this is where it
you
went
said
wrong. Okay, we've
No, I
identified
said
the
you
cause.
just
going
like-
to sleep.
I
Going
thought
to
you said
sleep.
waking up at 4.
No, I said
he
going to
wants to
sleep.
go to sleep at 4.
Joel was waking up at 4.
I
Joel
think
wanted
3:30. I agree with you, Adam. That's. I would stay up to
Mike,
3:30. not
Mike, give the
4.
microphone to Joel.
No, it's not his fault. Don't blame him if you can't understand. All right, I'll give you a better question.
This is really falling apart.
I'll give
The
you a better
scenes here.
question. This is something I saw and I thought this was very brilliant. It was, obviously there's a trillionaire that existing in the world
There
today.
is. We'll get to him.
And a trillion, that's a big number, a trillion.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to understand.
Well, it's
that
amazing.
number.
Like 5-6 years ago, there was no $1 trillion companies. Full stop.
I'm not talking about companies.
I know,
talking
but
about
like
the-
let alone person. But there was not even a company.
as you said, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But this is what I want to ask. I'm going to ask you last. We'll try to hit Mike first and then
Yeah.
Joel. At one end is $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the line starts. At the other end is $1 trillion. That's where the line ends. It's a continuum between those two. Where approximately, tell me where on the line roughly $1 billion would sit between $1 million and $1 trillion.
I'll say 30% along the way.
What about you, Joel? Where do you think it would?
Even less than that, I think it's very close to the 1 million.
What do you say?
It's 1%.
It's very close, right? It's all because the way to think about it is, and this is the big misnomer of what $1 trillion represents. The way to think about it is each little step along the line is $1 million, and it only takes 1,000 of those steps to get to $1 billion. but it takes a
it's
million.
0.1%,
It
sorry,
takes a million of those steps to get to a trillion. Like a trillion is much, 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 much bigger than a billion. It's kind of
It's 1,000 each time, right?
The difference between having $1 million and $1 billion is actually tiny
Yeah.
compared to a billion and a trillion. And I think that the reason I say that is less about money. In
Aren't
fact,
they both multiple of 1,000?
they are, but that's right. And so if you're thinking about it on like in scientific notation for the nerds amongst us, you would say a million is 10 to the 6 and a billion is 10 to the 9 and a trillion is 10 to the 12. And that feels like, but that is actually base 10 logarithmic scale. It jumps by a factor of 10 each time, like the Richter scale.
Yeah.
But when you actually put it on a continuum, like it is, a trillion is a difficult number to get your head around. And I didn't mean it in the context of Elon specifically, but I saw an article that said that kind of talked about how the human mind really can't conceive the number 1 trillion. And once we start getting into big numbers, they start blending into one.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of this thought that if you go back to like ancient Chinese literature, which presumably you don't do, but if one does,
Not often.
occasionally you'll do it. If just bored on an afternoon, bored at 4:30 in the morning, had to wake up, read a bit of Chinese literature. And so they sometimes speak about 10,000 things. That was the character they had, which represented the biggest number. And 10,000 in the world of ancient China, that signified everything. If you said 10,000 things, you meant everything. There was no character that was bigger than that. And like if you think about Roman numerals, I was trying to think about this.
There were more than 10,000 people in the Chinese Empire.
I know, but no one dealt with anything where you had to count it that was more than 10,000. Like no one was counting grains of sand.
Not about rice? They kind of count
Well,
rice?
counting grains of
Maybe.
rice. Who's
What do you
counting
need?
grains
Something
of
a
rice?
stock take.
No, you'd weigh it and you would count like I don't know, pounds or whatever they had, right? And so people didn't deal with big numbers. And if you think about ancient Rome/Greece, so Roman numerals, I think M might be the biggest. This 1,000.
Well, you do multiple M's. You do M, M,
You
M, M,
can,
M,
but
M.
what I'm saying is the single biggest representative
Yes.
character we could
Got
call
it,
it
sorry.
is actually pretty
What's
small.
what's the current number? Is it Egyptian numbers? What's it called?
I think they're Arabic numbers,
Arabic.
you would call them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that uses place values. It doesn't use character representation of numbers. But it is an interesting thought to consider that not that long ago, when I say not long ago, I mean a few thousand years ago, we were struggling to get past 10,000 as a conceptual number, and now we're into this trillion number. But really, the human mind is not fit to understand what a trillion actually means.
Can we move on? I've got a little question for you. So who said this quote? So this person said, in Silicon Valley, nobody's sitting around a table and going, oh, I wonder what the government's going to do to help us get this startup off the ground. You've got to do it yourself. There isn't the light brigade coming. Big Australian companies should be less risk averse and be buying products from local tech startups to help them succeed. Who said this? Which seasoned startup, Oracle, who's obviously a great entrepreneur, who obviously placed to give this kind of advice, who was the person who gave this sage advice?
I tell you why I'm scared to guess. Because I'm going to guess, because you're going to rip the arms and legs off this advice in about 5 seconds. And I'm going to say someone that I might like. And I do not want to be wrong because I've just thrown them under the Adam bus. And so I actually thought it was a politician before you said that.
Not
but I'm going to
miles off.
say I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to give this person's. I'll give you this. You know how like you can give like little clues. So there's quizzes gives you a clue, and then gives you another clue. It's a bit like Start of the
I
Century.
thought I
Who am I?
dodged this bullet. I heard.
No,
I heard
bullet's
it-
still heading in your
I heard
direction.
it banging and something whizzed past my head, and I thought I dodged this
bouncing off the
bullet.
back wall.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so he started that career at Arthur Anderson as an auditor.
Still don't know.
So, then was appointed in finance at Toyota.
Still don't
So
know.
not very entrepreneurial at this point. Then became senior vice president at Sun Microsystems.
Still don't. Is it a startup founder?
No, I like this person's giving advice on what startup founders
Is it
think.
a,
So you think that would
but
be a
it's
startup
not-
founder?
Oh, I think I know.
Are they currently alive?
Yes.
Very much.
What-
This quote was made last week.
It would be.
Okay.
It would be a tragic twist of fate if they weren't. This is. I mean, I know that's the way. What's that game where you put the stickers on your head with the names?
Charade?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that's a good question to ask in that game, but in the game where someone said to something a week ago, I feel like it might be a wasted question. I think I know who it is. Is it a female?
It may be a female.
He may be a female.
It may be a female.
Okay.
It's not
Well,
Caitlyn
you're really
Jenner.
adapting to 2026 with the he may be a female. Do you want me to say who I think it is?
Yes.
Robyn Denholm?
Yes.
Oh, God, I'm
Okay,
not
so-
happy that I said that.
So Robyn went to Sun Microsystems. While she was there, share price dropped from $258 to $9.50, by the way. So didn't do a great job,
not
did
her
old
fault.
Robyn.
I'll
She was CFO.
I'll play
like-
defense for Robyn, okay, which is not going to be easy.
So
in
senior
this-
vice president of finance. not
It's
CFO.
not going to be easy in this situation, but I'll try and play defense. Okay, not her fault. Some microsystems. Next allegation.
Well, if she wasn't her fault, what was she being paid millions of dollars a year for?
Do the numbers. Next allegation.
COO and CFO at Juniper Networks.
That did well, that business, didn't it?
Share price was 33 when she started, sold 10 years later for 40. So I wouldn't say it's great.
Okay, well, then we can tick that box. Fine.
COO and then she spent 2 years as COO and CFO at Telstra. Share price went from 366 to 338 in 2 years.
She wasn't CFO for long, right?
2 years. She was COO and then briefly CFO.
That's right. Till she got the tap on the shoulder.
By
after-
Elon's beard.
After people, I think the way I would describe her role is that she sits between investors and Elon,
Yeah.
so that he can have a professional face and interaction with investors and can do whatever he wants. I think it wouldn't be unfair to say at no point in time would she be prepared to say to Elon, "No, I'm stopping you doing."
Of course not, because she wouldn't have a job. So I don't hold
And
any
in fact,
ill
she
will for
won't
that.
even speak about Elon.
Yeah.
In any a journalist is not allowed to ask her a
She's
question
been
about
paid
Elon.
$1 billion to be Elon's deflector shield.
Well, I
essentially.
said to you, I think she might be have earned more money as an independent non-executive director than anyone else in history.
And she was also criticised by the Delaware Court of the highest corporate
I
court
know, I know
of being
you're-
effectively incompetent, is what they called her.
That might have flipped. That might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for you.
No, that was one thing. But what my point here is, she's now running the chairperson of the Tech Council. Like, we've got this horrendous tax that's
She's
about
not
to
the chair.
kill
Of the,
innovation.
she's the former chair of the Tech Council.
I thought she's still the chair.
No, she handed it over to Farquhar, to Scott
Oh,
Farquhar.
so Scott Farquhar's chair. Yeah, sorry,
But
right.
what you could say is she did the review.
She's the government's innovation advisor.
Yeah, she did the review of the R&D tax incentive.
Yes.
The primary problem with the R&D
was
tax
ignored, I
incentive...
think.
Well, no, it wasn't ignored. So I'll tell you the problem with it. So the main issue that the R&D tax incentive does, and we should say what this is. So this is if you spend money on research and development... that
Mostly
fits-
technologists.
that fits certain criteria. I'll tell you what doesn't fit the criteria in a second. You'll be shocked to hear.
Yeah.
But that fits the criteria. You'll either get some money back in cash from the government,
If you're less than
20
million,
mil of revenue, or you'll get tax offsets. And so it's a great system. It should be more generous. It's only paid once a year. That's the main problem.
I think it's
with
an
it.
okay system, actually. I don't think it should be more generous. I think it's pretty
And
generous.
it's paid once a year, which means there's lots of very expensive
Consultants make a heap of money.
lenders.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
consultants
oh,
are
yeah.
right, but there's lenders charging
course.
15% a year
Yes.
to say, I'll give you money this quarter, you spend it, you'll get even more of a rebate, I'll lend you money next quarter.
Yeah.
There's a whole industry of lending money of that.
Yeah.
And so the biggest issue with the R&D tax incentive is actually it's completely unclear about whether it applies to software, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd be the majority.
That's the biggest. So, who do you think the biggest? I know I've sidetracked you on your rant, but who do you think the biggest claimants of the R&D tax incentive?
Atlassian
in
and
Australia?
Canva.
So Canva's not.
Canva's not.
So Atlassian, I think, might be number one.
Yeah.
Number two is a company that you will not guess, but I'll give you clues. It's not a software company. I would say it's not even a tech company. I would say they don't even make anything themselves.
It's like BHP or something like
Well,
that.
you're close. It's Fortescue.
Okay.
And I think number three might be Cochlear. And so 1 and 3 got no issue. And so there's
CSL should be up there.
I didn't look beyond
There's
that.
a lot of international operations. So maybe.
The other big area that we give money to is foreign companies conducting clinical trials in Australia.
Yeah.
We give them lots of rebates on
Yeah.
tax. And so
Which itself was pretty weird.
and so in the budget that was just passed, one of the things that people didn't pay attention to is that there were some changes to the R&D tax
Right,
incentive.
because we were too distracted by all the other horrendous stuff to notice this pretty stupid thing.
And so one of the changes is that you
This
can
was the Atlassian rort, wasn't it?
well, you can now claim $150 million of tax rebates with the R&D tax incentive, up from, I don't know, some number less than that, 100 mil, I'm
Yeah.
going to say, but I don't know. And so there are only two.
I'm sure Scott Farquhar had nothing to do with this.
Well, there's only
It's
two
lobbying for the
there
Tech
are only
Council.
two companies in Australia
Who are at that level.
that claim, which
Yeah.
is Atlassian and Fortescue.
Yeah.
One is, I don't think we should be paying this for Fortescue.
Of course not. It's
They're
ridiculous.
digging your minerals.
Yeah, they're
out of
stealing our
your
minerals and
backyard.
making Andrew
But-
Twiggy $30 billion.
And so I'm actually genuinely not casting aspersions here. I'm just going to tell you a coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the coincidence. The previous chair of the Tech Council was Robyn Denholm.
Yeah.
The current chair is Scott Farquhar.
Yeah.
Robyn Denholm went to be the Government Innovation Advisor and wrote the R&D tax incentive recommendation, which said lift it to 150 mil, of which one of the two companies that benefits is Atlassian, and
Robyn's
Scott
also
Farquhar is a founder.
And Robyn Denholm's on an operating partner of Blackbird, which is effectively funded by Scott Mike. So there's links everywhere here.
So we could say, I'll say what the defence is, because the reason I'm saying it's a big coincidence, not casting aspersions.
I'm sure Scott gave some money to the Labor government as well.
What I'm saying is this, I'm not sure about that at all, and I like Scott.
Well, they definitely gave money to
Climate
200. They gave money to Climate 200. Indirectly goes to the Fund for Teals, which got rid of Liberals. So indirectly, all ends up in Labor's pockets.
This is I know, like, I don't want to. I think you might be right, but I just want to say what the opposite case to it is, which is it's a very small and incestuous industry, especially at the top of that industry, and so all of these people are going to know each other and have interconnected relationships. And I think it's not that I'm even saying this is what happened. I think if you're going to have these interconnected relationships and it's going to involve government and there's going to be one of two companies that benefits and it's going to be your company and you're the head of the whatever. So you should be super transparent over and above what is reasonable to show that that no one can cast any aspersions. And I think that didn't happen, and it smells fishy, and I don't think that's a good look.
Is that right? I actually meant to talk about this a few weeks ago, but we just got distracted by the even more appalling CGT stuff. But this is just outrageous. This is a gift to Atlassian from the Australian taxpayer because Atlassian lobbied on behalf of the Tech Council. Like, what is Scott Farquhar? Every tech company in Australia should be getting rid of these Tech Council clowns because they don't do anything for us. They've never done a single thing for us. We're a tech company, you're a tech company. When have they never spoken to us? They do anything. They look after the billion-dollar US-based companies.
So
Atlassian's a US company.
So if you really think about who's running the tech industry in Australia, if you think the Tech Council has that role. And I think there are other industry organisations that have been around for longer that would dispute that role, but definitely the Tech Council is very well known. Yep. Predominantly we're appointing people who are not paying significant amounts of company tax in Australia. Now, Fortescue is. I just think they should be paying much more tax in Australia. But it is a weird concept. And the reason that the Tech Council has really no power relative to the Minerals Council is because the Minerals Council pays tons of tax. And so that's what gives you power. Employing lots of people. So the Pharmacy Guild has lots of power because they have...
And they're very smart.
Yeah, they influence lots of people. And the AMA, right?
Yeah.
The Medical Association.
CFMEU, the classic case.
Yeah, but... So the problem with the Tech Council is they don't really pay much tax and they don't employ that many people. And like we're huge advocates of the tech industry, but I think the way they're going about it is not the right way of doing it. And the other problem that happened with this R&D tax incentive is that they raised the threshold. Do you realise that? So the threshold on which you can make an R&D claim has been lifted to $250,000.
That's actually really high.
And so all of these small startups in their first 1 or 2 years of starting, they now lose access.
Yeah.
And so at the top
people they should be getting it.
And so that makes me like the fact that like Fortescue is like basically pulling its money out off the taxpayer. Yeah. It annoys me, but like we're in a country of rorts here, okay?
Yeah.
But what makes me angry is that these small startups that should be supported, they've just lost the ability to make claims.
It just shows the Labor government's so out of touch with.
It's really terrible.
With founders and younger... Just going back to
I tried to sidetrack you off.
Going back to Robyn's quote. Right. How is Robyn's going? Nobody's sitting around a table going, I wonder what the government's going to do to help get this startup off the ground. She's never worked in a startup in her life. She started at Tesla when it was $1 trillion business, or give or take. Who is she to be telling startup founders what they can, what should and shouldn't be thinking? She's the last person who should be advising us on what we should be thinking.
Well, so her main...
Shut up, Robyn. Learn your place.
Well, her main comment was...
She's a billionaire. How dare she lecture founders with no money in the bank who are living off ramen and what they should and shouldn't be doing?
Well, my guess is that she must have been like a monk or something in a previous life because she's had the smoothest path to $1 billion. Yeah. Like there's been no blood, sweat or tears. I mean, who makes $1 billion with no blood, sweat and tears?
She's got $1 billion in standover money. She's stood away from investors' hard-earned money and Elon Musk making money. Essentially. That's her job. She's had $1 billion for it.
So I begrudge her no dollars of that $1 billion, to be honest with you. Like I think there's a lot of luck involved in business of all sorts, and like she's got very lucky, and she doesn't have.
Well, if you look at her history, it's been abhorrent. She's
totally
destroyed value everywhere she's went. The share price has gone down. She's the Black Widow.
I totally disagree with that.
Tesla aside, but she obviously wasn't the executive there.
I totally disagree.
Well, the numbers are the numbers. I'm just telling you numbers. Juniper went up. Sun dropped about 97%. Juniper underperformed the market massively. Tesla Telstra significantly underperformed. That's everywhere she went. She's the angel of death.
I'll give you your. I'll
Black Widow.
I'll psychoanalyze
She's
you.
she's the ScarJo of Australian of tech companies.
This is a psychoanalysis of you. You find like very good arguments about business stuff, but then you feel very aggrieved by the individual behind them. Whereas I don't really feel aggrieved by the individual at all. Like I think there's a lot of luck. I think she's a good operator as an operator. I think she is, and I think she was in the right.
I wouldn't put her money in a company that she's an executive of.
Well, you should have put it in Tesla. She was.
Well, Tesla's just crazy overvalued. Doesn't mean it's a good business.
She was in the right place at the right time, and she took advantage of it. And so my issue.
Well, according to the Court of Chancery, she's terrible at her job. That's not my view. That's the most senior US corporate judge has said this.
I know that's a much better rebuttal of me than you've got. But I will say this: like there's a lot of luck involved in these things, and I'm very happy for people to have luck. My biggest issue with what she said is that she said something along the lines of I've never met a founder who, as you said, like I never met a founder who cared about tax when they were starting a business.
She met a founder at all, other than Scott and Mike?
She has, but my rebuttal of that would be pretty simple. The reason you've never met a founder that cares about tax is you've never tried to charge them 47% before. And like, go charge them 47%, and you just did, and now they're all talking about it. Like when you were taking, when it's not her, she's not in the government, but when you were taking 23.5% of founders' gains, founders kind of, I guess, felt, well, that's a lot of the gain, but it doesn't feel unfair. It doesn't feel...
We made money, let's give something back.
It doesn't feel punitive.
Yeah.
And now you're taking 47%. It does feel punitive.
Well, it is punitive.
And so now you hear founders complaining about it. And so when she says, I've never heard a founder think about tax before starting a startup, I would say, listen harder.
Yeah.
They're all complaining, and not literally all, but enough are complaining so you know it's an issue. And the ones that can create the best startups, that is internationally focused from day one global businesses, they really can go overseas. And I want to read you this from the New Zealand Minister of something. I mean, really, who cares what they're the Minister of? But did you see this comment by the New Zealand Minister for something? It's the New Zealand Finance Minister, Nicola Willis. She said, Australians looking to start or grow a business have an epic opportunity. And that opportunity is to do it in New Zealand.
Absolutely
no capital gains tax, very simple tax system, broad-based, low rate, terrible economy, getting paid in pesos.
Oh, it's not that bad.
She didn't say those things. We keep it simple. We allow you accelerated depreciation and deductibility on your capital investments, which in fairness exists in Australia in some form as well. Where the bloody hell are you? I mean, that's politicians.
Yeah.
If you're Aussie, come over.
She's right.
She's right. It's sad to say, but she's right.
Can I just, I had a couple of, so my daughter had a cheerleading thing this weekend and a dance thing. And I just thought about both and I actually didn't realise. So cheerleading, it's a new club, was started by, I think, a couple of mid-20s, like real Gen Z, 25 and 26-year-old. They've created this incredible, there's like 1,000 people there. They've been making in the millions of dollars of revenue for sure. And they're really smart. And not only do they start, this is a great business, not just financially, but also it's getting kids, mostly girls, but not girls, young girls and boys, super active, really fit. It's a really great business in every respect. It ticks every box. And they started from scratch. They're filling this warehouse out in Port Melbourne. It's just an amazing business, and by just an incredible young couple. And let's say they do really well, then they're growing to $2, $3, $4 million revenue, and they can sell it for $10 million in a few years' time. They're getting hit by they're the classic 47% because there's no capital involved in this. It's just basically an empty warehouse. This is
sweat equity.
We talk about tech companies getting then Labor's talked about we're going to give you some tech companies. Let's change the topic away from tech and talk about real small businesses like this cheerleading business, like my daughter's dance coach, who's again a young lady who she'd be young 30s, created another 1,000 kids in the class, incredible business. This is a huge risk she took. This is like she's run this business for 3 or 4 years. This is 3 great young Australians who created millions of dollars of wealth and incredible great fitness, and you couldn't ask for more from our young people. And they're going to be smashed with 47% tax from Dim Jim and Albanese. So this is who, and we're going to get a very special guest in later, but this is exactly who this capital gains tax smashes. It's not the Scott Farquhars and the Mike Cannon-Brooks or the Adir Shifters and the Adam Schwabs. We're fine. We get grandpa in. It's a young 25-year-old who's about to build this significant business, doing a great thing for the economy, about to be absolutely smashed from the politics of envy and incompetence.
So those people who listen to what I say, which is not you, or read what I write, which I think but you forget, will remember that we had this debate 4 weeks ago or so. I generally don't remember the past. And you tore shreds off me for in any way supporting a modification of the CGT. You remember that?
Because you wanted 30%.
You killed me.
I didn't want you lifting the CGT.
You killed me. Yeah. And I said to you, there's no chance there's a very small chance this government is going to flip-flop on this CGT. I think they're going to ram it, and the only chance is for modification.
I agreed with you on that.
And you said, go down with the ship.
I totally agree. And we got to get this government out and bring a government who reduces it to 10% like it should be, like it is everywhere else in the world.
In the meantime, if your cheerleading friends sell their business in the next 2 years, you don't want them paying 47%.
Of course, they obviously can't sell your business now.
And so we want to get some modification at least.
No, I think you're better off making it worse and getting the government voted. I think I don't want to live on my knees like you are. No, you need to take them down.
I'll tell you about like the issue that we face, I think. You tell me if you disagree with this. Mike can chime in on this as well. Mike, you don't ask me a question, you just give me an answer.
I'm ready.
You just roll with the punches.
You're the Mia Khalifa of tax policy, just like constantly on your knees.
No. I kind of knew where that was going, and I still couldn't stop laughing. All right, so I guess let me refocus. So basically, this is I've totally lost my train of thought. I can't even ask another question.
You're saying how I tore shreds off you too.
This has been a great episode. So the problem is this. I remember what I was going to say to you now. When we think about what is going to shape votes, and we're going to talk to someone about what's going to shape votes, do we think CGT or tax policy more broadly is going to shape votes in 2 years? Do you think that is going to shape a material? Remember, they're going after 25 to 35-year-olds to get their votes.
I 100% think it will shape. You saw there was a poll yesterday.
They have got a 1 trillion seat lead against anyone else.
We're seeing Victoria is about to be overturned. So, I don't think
maybe
landslides happen, and this is, I think, a case where it could.
So you think
the challenge here is that One Nation and Liberals. God knows what's happening there.
But you're calling 2 years out. You're saying, I think these CGT and other tax changes will create a landslide swing of 25 to 35-year-olds against the incumbent Labor government.
You don't need every 25 and 35-year-old.
Landslide swing.
This is what I said a few weeks ago, and I think we're both in.
You should go into politics. Yes or no?
We're very much in this category.
Swing.
Look at the category of. You look at swinging vote. You don't care about the rusted edges, like the people, the unionists and the billionaires. Forget them. What you want to talk about is what's this middle? What's this 5% swinging voters going to do? And a lot of those swinging voters went to Labor in the last 2 elections. They didn't want to vote for Morrison. They didn't want to vote for Dutton.
All right.
And they trusted Labor not to lie to us on economic policy. They've lied. They've killed the trust of this 5% of aspirational voters. They call it Howard's battlers. And I think they've lost more than that. And we've seen that's why Albanese is now less popular than Pauline Hanson.
People that gave up on Morrison / Dutton and went to the Labor Party.
Or the Teals, which went back to the Labor Party.
Yeah, they're not going to be enough for Labor to lose the election. They need to lose 25 to 35-year-olds that maybe have always voted for Labor. And so...
it's only because they haven't had a chance to vote for Liberal yet.
Right, but so what I'm asking you is, do you think this tax policy is going to swing enough of them to roll the government?
I think it's less about the tax policy. I think it's more about the fact that you can't trust these guys now.
Okay,
they've blown
that's
the
a good
trust
point.
of the
So
electorate.
do you think the lying about tax, maybe I'll say there will be 3 things that might swing this vote. And then, Mike, you're going to give us an answer.
Well, I've been sitting waiting
No, you just wait. We'll come to you. So these are the 3 things that might swing voters. Number 1, the lies. That might swing voters. Number 2, the crappy policy itself.
It's the type of lie. It's not like politicians lie all the time. This lie went to there's core and non-core promises. This was a core promise. We won't change the tax rate.
I've only got one word, so I call it lies. 1, lies. 2, tax.
Let's call it fraud, not lies.
Okay, you can call it that. 3, recession. So we might end up in a recession at the time of the election. Those are my 3 key words. And you think one or all of those will contribute?
What about inflation? You're not putting inflation. That's what cost Biden the electorate.
Yeah, I'll put it. I think if
possibly Morrison as well.
I think if inflation continues like this, and the jobs, unemployment
that's
keeps
more important.
rising,
That's more important than recession.
Yeah, well, economy. Let's call it.
Yeah,
it's the economy, stupid. You know who said that?
James Carvell in 1992 for political strategist.
And then who stole it? Bill Clinton. He stole
it was Clinton's strategist who said it.
Yes, and then Clinton stole it as his pitch. Okay, of course you know that. So those 3 things. You think one or more of those 3 things will result in the Labor government losing power in 2 years' time?
I think it's the trust element's the biggest one.
Okay, that's interesting. You, Mike?
So I think that people in my age group, so early 30s, are less...
Our age group.
Me and Adam's age group. Where
Your age group, Adam's aspirational. That's what you don't like this because it's a tax on aspiration, and your aspiration is to be his age.
I actually think that people my age group are less engaged with these policy changes than you think. I think that a lot of them don't even really understand how it affects them.
I think they're not. You said you, and you pointed to me, and there's no video on you. But I think that they're not engaged. When I go to cafes and I talk to people in your age group and younger, they don't care about this.
Yes,
I agree with you.
Okay, so you agree with me. And I think in this sort of generation, there's just almost like a branding thing of Labor good, Liberal bad.
Yep.
I think that will prevail. I think there will be a bit of swing related to the trust issues that you've said, but I don't know if it'll be enough because I just think that there's like a...
Well, it's not the polls don't seem to agree with that.
It's 2 years out.
I know, but there's a bit of clearly poll shame. Dutton was ahead for a point as well, but
Is
it's
there
not just Liberal; it's One Nation.
Well, let's ask that question. Is there any possibility, Joel? You answer this question as well. Is there any possibility?
Joel's even younger than me, though.
If there's any possibility, I see Joel with his. Joel is so beautiful and quiet in this room, but then I see him on his own podcast online, and you're absolutely going for it, Joel. I mean, hats off. People should check it out.
What's it called? Give it a plug.
The Remna podcast.
Cool.
Very good. And so, is there any chance, Mike? What percentage likelihood, I'll say, that you'll vote for One Nation in the next election?
Me personally,
Yep.
Probably 0.
0.
Yeah.
But what if
He lives in bloody Western
I know, but the
suburbs.
question is, what if I asked him when we weren't recording? He might say higher than 0 because
98.
they got that problem, right? But I'll take your 0 as honest. Are you
Drinking
also?
Rush. I'm in a
are
red
you-
wig before.
Are you also 0, Joel?
At 0, yeah.
What do you think that what's happened in the last month with the Labor Party? I'm going to try to ask in a neutral way. What happened in the last month? Do you think it's going to have any material effect on support in your age group, your friends, etc., for Labor at the next election?
We'll probably analyse it more when it comes closer to the election because when things happen, you want to take a step back and let it sit for a bit. So I'm unsure at the moment.
Maybe though,
Yeah,
maybe.
So
he's probably more similar to you, Adam, than Mike is probably more skeptical on that. I mean, it's going to be fascinating. I would say this. If it doesn't, what have we got left? And if it doesn't, one of the reasons will be, as we've spoken about, because all of the jobs growth in this country almost exclusively is public sector jobs growth, and they're not going to vote for
critical public service theory.
Yeah, and so I think, the thing is, it's 2 years hours, but if this has no effect or minimal effect on the Labor vote, is there anything they can't do? Is there there could not have been
Well, it looks like it's having an effect. The question is it enough of an effect? And how will that effect translate with One Nation/Liberal preferences is the question.
Well, one of the questions it will be interesting to ask shortly, in my view, is if the votes, One Nation has got lots of votes now, but it's likely that a lot of people don't think that One Nation can actually govern.
Yeah.
And so when those votes bleed off One Nation at election time, how is the coalition going to get those votes and stop them going to Labor? And I think that is the ultimate political question that everyone should be fixated on right now.
Liberals need to... So where the Liberals got killed with Morrison is the Teals. The Teals stole those classic
right.
Liberals. They lost Kooyong, for God's sake.
That's right.
And Goldstein and heaps of Liberals, very safe Liberal seats in both Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. But that's what killed the Liberals, really, because they basically held no seats except for Goldstein now. So can I just move on to something, somewhat political, but a bit businessy. But you see the further humiliation for the bankrupt Victorian government with the privatised VicRoads going offline for an entire week as the inept organisation switched over its main database during a long weekend to a new cloud system. People had to cancel driving tests. They could not complete hazard perception, car deals, and unable to obtain roadworthy. This is pretty serious. This is a big business. Of course, VicRoads was pillaged and privatised by the horrid Dan Andrews government 3 years ago. Created a joint venture for $7.9 billion, effectively with Aware Super, Australian Retirement Trust, and Macquarie, to purchase the rights. So it's kind of like effectively privatising it in substance, if not form. Back in 2022, this is obviously just trying to keep the lights on in Victoria. They've just privatised something that should never have been privatised. And this is my point. If you're going to privatise something, you need to privatise into a competitive environment. You privatise into a monopoly, you're just going to get customers ripped off, or in this case, ripped off in a different sense, it's obviously starving of funds. So how low can the Dan Andrews government, Allen government actually get? Is there anything they can't stuff up?
Well, it's terrible. I don't have anything to add about this. Basically, I think the human story of this is kids who are 18 that booked in their license.
Yeah, super nervous and
They have to get it postponed for months.
Yeah.
Because it's all booked out.
Yeah.
So they don't say, we're going to put extra people on, we're going to work longer hours.
Shocking.
They're like, well, we don't care.
What if you want to get to work? You can't get to work
Yeah.
because these people are so incompetent.
Yeah, it's absolutely a disgrace.
Coming on, I've got a big SpaceX coming up in a second. Once before, do you see also one of the worst performed businesses on the ASX, Xero, appears to have completely lost touch with reality? There's a front page AFR story noting that Chairman David Thodey is speaking to shareholders to attempt to rebase Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, this is the CEO's lucrative pay packet. Singh Cassidy has the unique honour of being both the highest paid and possibly the worst performing CEO in Australia. Xero's price is down a massive 62% this year alone. Of course, it has been caught up in the SaaS apocalypse. Much of Xero's horrendous performance has actually been due to incompetence, with the board and Singh Cassidy undertaking a horrendous, disastrous, top-of-the-market acquisition of loss-making Melio in a desperate bid to crack the US market. Singh Cassidy receives a massive salary, much of which actually is based on non-performance-based equity grants. She also received a huge sign-on bonus. That is actually performance-based because it's based on the share price. She won't get any of that because she's been so incompetent. According to the AFR, Thodey has begun meeting with institutional shareholders to discuss adjusting her Singh Cassidy's remuneration to ensure she holds shares worth 1% of the market cap. Given Xero has a market cap of $12 billion, that's $120 million, despite presiding over a 62% dumping of the share price. A Xero spokesman said the majority of Singh Cassidy's pay was at risk and tied to Xero's global financial shareholder return results, which seems to be contrasting to actual rep. Adir, views on this? You're a good mate of David Thodey's.
I'm not a good mate of David Thodey. I think he's excellent, but in this situation,
Excellent in what sense?
it will shock me. I think he's smart. I think he's a kind person as a leader, and I think he's got Australia's best interests very much at heart.
You certainly got Sukhinder Singh Cassidy's best interest at heart, paying her $26
I
million
said
a
from the
year.
start, I think this was not a good chairmanship to take, and he's severely wedged. And I actually think
He's also chairman of Sydney Uni, don't forget, who's been horrifically anti-Semitic
I
over the
agree,
past 2
but
years. So he hasn't had a great run, old David.
I agree with that. The challenge is that it would surprise me if shareholders don't get very unhappy about this.
They got a first strike last year.
Shareholders do not like rebasing of executive REM.
Let alone when the company's dropped 62%.
Because the thing is this, if you start and you say, I've got this great strategy, we're going to drive the share price up with my incredible decision-making and execution, okay, that's fine. I don't even mind if you say, we're going to go backwards before we go forwards, which obviously they didn't want to say because that's not popular. But definitely, if this goes forwards now, it will have gone significantly backwards first. But if that's your belief, if you say, this is my strategy and my execution and my mission, and then as CEO, and then the share price goes into reverse dramatically, you need to own it. You can't turn around and say, well, there's no incentive for me anymore to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Either you believe it or you don't. If you believe it, then stick with it because you're going to make lots of money in the future when it rockets back up. Catapult's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We believe in it, right? If you don't believe in it, quit. That's pretty simple. But this idea that says, I had this strategy, investors don't like it, it's run the share price into the ground, and now I don't feel motivated anymore.
Well, she hasn't actually said that. Thodey's more implying this.
Well, come on. What did he wake up with a brainwave in the middle of the night and say, you know what? I don't want her to feel sad. I'm just going to go and risk my own reputation with shareholders. There's got to be pressure behind the
worst
scenes.
chairman is the chairman that falls in love with the CEO. We saw Richard Goyder with Alan Joyce was probably the classic, and he also was Neil McLaughlin. That's why I made Richard Goyder such a terrible chairman. And this is David Thodey's fallen for the same trap. He's fallen in love with his CEO, ironically, while the CEO is completely underperformed. And you can't blame Sukhinder completely for Melio because the board signed off on that clearly. So that's board culpability as much as executive culpability there. They're both a disgrace. But to be even suggesting a pay rise.
Look, I don't know who their biggest shareholder is now, but
I think Rod Drury still has 7%, doesn't he?
I'm not sure, but I don't know. I wonder what instos are in there. There's got to be some institutional investors in there. I think they'd hate this. You know, I'm going to say something very obtuse, but there were times in the past where, not with the current CEO, where like I was under some pressure when the share price fell and executives / CEO wanted rebasing. Yeah. And the founders were not in favour of it. Yeah. And it was a lot of pressure as a chairman, I have to tell you, because no one wants to... A CEO failing is the biggest failure of a chairman. and a board in a sense, like hiring a CEO and having them fail. Maybe it's the second biggest failing. The biggest failing is hanging on to a failing CEO because you don't want to have the reputational damage. And like there's a lot of pain and suffering in appointing a CEO when there's an acting CEO. Yeah. Like investors hate it. I've never had more hate in my life than when I had an acting leader in the role and had to recruit. Like investors hate it, okay? Yeah. But I think that rebasing by 60% the pay of the CEO because of a falling share price, I think it's, unless there's a very, very good reason for it, I think it's really not.
The only reason you would allow is if the CEO comes in and then 6 months later the share price gets dumped through no fault of their own. Like maybe there's been a massive share market. It's stuff that was before that, right? But she's been in for 3 years. She did the Amelia acquisition. Like you can't blame predecessors after 3 years. You can blame it under a year. I've got some sympathy for it. But this is just, I think David's got to go. Like I think both CEO and chairman I call this with Drone Shield. And this is the same. Chairman, CEO gone. They have to go. I don't think David's going to have another chairmanship again. This has been a disaster, an embarrassment. What was one of the best companies in Australia and New Zealand? It was a New Zealand listed company. But
definitely have him as a chairman, but I think the Xero thing
can't be. This is it.
The Xero thing has not gone well. But it's, you know what? Imagine the poor person that's doing investor relations for this business. Like that's a tough sell.
Like, it was like, remember the Iraqi information minister during it's that kind of role? Like you have to come in and literally say the preposterous. Let's move on to the big news.
Well, hang on. Before we go to big news, I want to tell you just a 30-second additional bear case on Firmus.
Okay.
So Firmus obviously is the neo cloud. That's big sales pitch in life is that they're better at cooling data centers than anyone else in the universe.
Yeah,
and
literally. Better than NVIDIA.
Anyone in the known universe. Yeah. There could be someone out there with data centers in space that are like what Elon wants to do, that are cooling using space as the cooling mechanism. Pretty effective. But and so Amazon released an update to how much water they use every year to cool their data centers. Yeah.
This is trying to quell opposition to data centers essentially because a lot of people complaining, a lot of saying,
people
I don't want data centers.
About water usage. Yeah. And I would say it looks like a terrible story, but actually it's a pretty good story. So I don't know if you know how many litres they use or what order of
it's less than I saw this. It's less than I expected.
Do you think it's in the millions or billions?
Well, per data center?
Per year across Amazon.
Oh, Amazon.
Across the whole of Amazon.
Well, Amazon obviously are a hyperscaler. I would have thought it has to be billions,
billions.
Right? Yeah.
So they use 5 billion litres of water a year, which in context, I mean, it sounds terrible.
How much does like an aluminium smelter use? They're huge water
Well, I think the whole of Melbourne uses 1 billion litres a day.
Oh,
as a point of comparison.
So it's not big, yeah.
So it's big, but it's not crazy. Yeah. But this is what's more...
Amazon would have a lot of data centers.
And this is what's more interesting.
AWS.
It's actually going down.
Yeah.
So in 2021 or 22, whatever it was double. They used double.
Wow.
It might have even been more than double.
Amazing.
And so actually what they've discovered is there are lots of different ways to cool data centers and pumping water through it. We can have closed systems that don't use as much water. We can use air cooling. My point is this. The data center hyperscalers, they're on to the idea of cooling.
They're not stupid.
They're on to cooling. Yeah. They're like, cooling, that's important. and like, it's working. Like, they're using less water. And I'm not advocating for data centers. I actually think that the power is a bigger issue for data centers than the water.
And power is water because you need water to create power.
Power is water and power is also power. Like, you have to generate the power, right? And so, and you have to burn something to generate the power or use renewables, solar, right?
Yeah. Or hydro.
Hydro. Yeah. Either, well, I mean, the way I think about electricity is either something is turning a turbine, or there's a photovoltaic cell involved with solar.
Or it's nuclear, which is...
Nuclear's turning a turbine.
Oh, that's true.
It's just a different way of turning a turbine.
Yeah.
And so something has to spin it. Yeah. Water, coal, steam, something, or the only other one that's completely different as far as I know is like a photovoltaic cell, which just the solar creates a reaction at the electron level.
And wind is turbines as well,
electron
right?
level.
Yeah.
And wind turns a turbine. Everything turns a turbine. Yeah. And so I think electricity is a big issue. But like the thing is this, everyone is focused on cooling. It just feels increasingly implausible if there was any gap left for me that Firmus could have a long-term competitive advantage over cooling data centers. I know, but like I'm always skeptical about my own judgment. And so I always want data points to try to reinforce whether I'm right or wrong. And when I saw this thing with Amazon and how effectively they're reducing water usage whilst hyperscaling the number of data centers, it feels to me that these hyperscalers are all over.
Well, it never made sense that a couple of dudes from Australia who one ran a bra business, one was like a lingerie salesman, and one was Ollie's just a finance guy.
Yeah.
How these guys could be better at tech than real genius technologists out of like Silicon Valley. It didn't make any sense. Speaking of genius technologists out of Silicon Valley, SpaceX completed the world record IPO last week, raising US $75 billion. SpaceX is now one of the world's most valuable businesses, and as you said, Elon Musk has become the world's first trillionaire. The IPO was priced at $135 US per share, traded up to 173 and settled back at 161, which is basically a 19% premium. That's kind of considered the perfect pop. IPO is a bit of a marketing event, obviously only selling 5% of the equity, so you can afford a bit of the dilution's effectively close to zero anyway. So this was, and you want a bit of good sort of goodwill publicity. So this is a perfectly priced
Did
IPO.
you buy a stock?
No, of course not.
I would have bought.
I would have shorted rather before I bought it.
No, you would have shorted it. I would have bought it and sold it on day one.
Oh, as in, I'm not a holder of the stock, so I just wouldn't have even bothered.
I just knew that I was not going to get any stock. Like, you got 1/10 of what you asked for.
Is that all? So Musk's retail fan base was a crucial component of the deal. They placed more than $100 billion in orders. Of course, not everybody's so excited. Legendary short seller Jim Chanos, who famously exposed Enron, said SpaceX was a hopes and dreams IPO driven by enthusiasm for Musk and AI rather than fundamentals of a company that's yet to post a profit. Anthropic and OpenAI, two of obviously SpaceX's AI competitors, are now expected to go public in the next year, seeking $1 trillion valuations each. Of course, the performance of SpaceX will be scrutinised by venture capitalists and investors before that time. Adir, what are your views on this float?
It's hard for me to communicate how much this feels like the .com boom.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's just
exactly the same thing.
It's almost identical.
Yeah.
Like the fact that.
And what is SpaceX? If you go back in time, what would you compare as the company to most close to SpaceX?
I mean, the reason there's no perfect equivalent is because SpaceX is all about one person. It's singularly about one person. It's one person with all of these hopes and dreams businesses. So Tesla, that's a real business. That's not in SpaceX yet, but that will end up in SpaceX. Yeah. And so Tesla's a real business, just massively overvalued, and a business that never quite reached the potential that its investors were hoping for, or hasn't yet reached it.
I think
early investors, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Early investors, yes, but not in the last 5 years.
It's just become a meme stock now, yeah.
And then it's got these other businesses that are not businesses, right? So this AI business.
Well, Starlink's a business.
Okay, Starlink is a little business.
No, Starlink's a great business.
It's a little business by US stock exchange listed companies.
Starlink
standards.
and Tesla have actually not that different.
They're real businesses.
Just small.
Agreed. Small businesses by US listed
compared to
company
Nvidia
standards.
or Microsoft. Or
that's right. And then there's some non-businesses.
Yeah.
Like
XAI.
the artist formerly known as X. That's a non-business. And like XAI, which is now part of that, that's a non-business. In fact, that's a negative business.
Well, it's now they've actually announced a couple of big deals to sell compute to Anthropic and I think maybe OpenAI is the other one.
Coincidentally good timing.
Yeah, so they're basically now almost, I think the losses drop significantly because they built these two massive Colossus data centers. They can now rent them out at maybe a small profit. So they now become effectively a property play.
Yeah, they turn massive capital expenditure, CapEx, into revenue, but unlikely to be making any return on the CapEx.
It's like buying a factory, essentially.
Well, it's like buying a factory and renting it out at an amount of money that makes you a terrible, terrible, terrible return on the factory. And so the reason I say that bit of background is it's easy to mistake this as being unlike the .com boom because the businesses are making revenue.
Yeah.
But what is the same is that the valuation and the economics of the businesses are completely disconnected. Yeah. It's easy to see that they're disconnected when you're trying to price eyeballs in the .com boom because the eyeballs don't have a dollar sign in front of them. They've got a dollar sign in them, but not in front of them.
I think that and people could say, .com was ridiculous because of eyeballs, but in a sense it made sense because what the principle was, look at Meta. Meta had a lot of eyeballs and then it was able to later monetize. So the people weren't completely stupid back then. They basically thought, we'll get traffic to the site and we'll figure out a way to monetize that traffic. Meta was a perfect example of that. Google was another example of that. So Google had barely any revenue when it listed.
So maybe the way I would phrase that from a business point of view is I would say the eyeballs were seen as an input metric that would eventually drive revenue.
Exactly.
And so if you got enough of them, built them up, like there would be scale.
And very minimal incremental costs when you hit that scaling point.
And it was true in a couple of cases and almost entirely false. And so now I think it's easy to mistake this because of the revenue. But what you've got is a business that cannot possibly be worth this on an economic basis. Not just because the multiple of revenue is 100 or something, but because there is actually not an addressable market large enough to support this kind of valuation. And so
for the business they do.
For the business they do, that's right. Well, you might argue for any business because their TAM is getting to be the size of the global economy pretty soon.
NVIDIA's a much more valuable business, and it's somewhat legitimate based on the current CapEx spend.
But this is about tomorrow's promises, the SpaceX business.
It's
more about today's
but it's a specific, SpaceX's specific business doesn't have the TAM is what you're saying, whereas NVIDIA's and Microsoft's and Amazon's do. And Apple's do.
But NVIDIA is not promising the TAM that SpaceX has. So what I'd say is, because NVIDIA
SpaceX TAM's ridiculous.
Because NVIDIA has today, they can be a bit more realistic about tomorrow. By the way, I think Jensen has become a cheerleader for the AI boom and has detached from being a level-headed CEO. But I think because Elon has virtually nothing to sell today to justify valuation, he has to sell tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. He's the master of bringing forward the story.
And so I think people will look back on this in X number of years, and I'm evasive about what X is because it could be 5 and it could be 1. I don't think it's 1. I think you got to.
1.
I think OpenAI and Anthropic will now go to market, and they'll be massively oversubscribed. And you never really know what pops the bubble. It's not even really obvious in hindsight. What's obvious is it's unpredictable. But I think this has got some time to run. But ultimately, I think that we'll look back on this and say, what were these people thinking? And the last comment I want to say is this. Now when I read very smart people, putting aside Chanos, very smart people, like people that are doing deals in Goldman Sachs, okay, they've got a vested interest, but not just that, really smart fund managers, and I sent you one example. So very smart people are now saying very dumb things, drinking the Kool-Aid. I remember that from the dot-com boom, and I was young, and I remember thinking, hang on, am I really dumb? I must be really dumb.
I invested in a business called Newtel, I remember, in like 1999.
Oh, Newtel, I remember that business.
And I remember thinking, eventually I sold most of my stuff before the crash. I did generally all right.
That's impressive.
There was a couple of things. Newtel was one of the things I held, and the reason I held is I saw Pratt was still invested. There's something else. Like I thought these guys are smarter than me. Like they must know something I don't. Not going to sell that particular stock, and it dropped 100%. Went like it literally collapsed. So like and that was probably when I realised these so-called smart people, be it analysts, be it investors, be it rich people, they're actually dumber than anyone.
Well, they're not dumber than anyone, but they are very close to the fire. The glow and the heat and the excitement. And what I would say is, if you're skeptical and cynical about what's going on, do not second guess yourself based on smart people. And if you're not cynical and you think you're right, don't draw any sucker from smart people agreeing with you. Like I saw almost every smart person being wrong in the .com.
Definitionally, that makes them not smart.
Well, what is it? Does it? Because there are people that rode NVIDIA from $300 million valuation, let's say, and they've made 15x on their money.
A billion valuation, sorry. $300 billion valuation.
$300
been a while since not 300 million.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think anyone VCs rode them from there. But 300 bill, you're right. And so they've made 15x of their money. And let's say they sell now. Were they dumb or smart? I think they were smart. They understood how the system works.
They're smart because they've now realised it's overpriced. So like it's like. And that's the smart because they sold. But I'm talking about the ones that don't sell.
Do you think someone that buys in on the bigger fool theory, which is I'm a fool for buying this, but a bigger fool is going to pay more in future, dumb or smart?
That was when I bought our house. I think like 7 years ago. I basically I'm overpaying for this, but I think like people are stupid and it's like what I've doubled since then. Like I thought it was 50% overvalued. Now I think it's 300% overvalued, whatever it is.
And so that's even smarter because you got to live in it in the meantime and got all of that benefit. But I think there are lots of different emotional dynamics that make markets work. And there is, this thing, I always quote this to you, Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. It's like in the Jewish Bible. And there's a time for this and a time for that, and a time to kill and a time to, stop the war, whatever it is. And so there's a time to plant and a time to reap. That's one of the lines. And so I think we're in the time to reap now.
Totally.
But there was still time to plant 2 years ago when I was scared to plant because I thought there were problems with the soil.
I was claiming that whatever with the FANGs, Mag 7 or whatever, was massively overpriced and it kept going up another 18 months. Well, it's pretty much plateaued now.
And I think contrarians spend more time being wrong than right. But when they're right, they're really right. And so you've got to be able to hold on. And I think there's a time for growth investing and a time for value investing. And I think that at the moment, it is safer to look through the lens of a value investor because you'll avoid the bubble. But you need to accept, I'm sure you do accept this, you might miss out on 2 years of growth. NVIDIA, it's not impossible that NVIDIA is going to be worth $20 trillion.
I think
No, it could. It could 4x from here. If SpaceX can be worth $1 gazillion.
No, but I think the problem is when you start making money, it's hard to get these ridiculous valuations. You start getting a profit multiple.
NVIDIA, so SpaceX.
We've always been a victim of that here.
Elon is the Pope of tech.
Yeah.
So he's a Pope, so that's a religion. And NVIDIA is another, just a bit of a smaller religion.
Yeah.
But once a religion is worth $5 trillion, it can be worth 20 trillion. Like we've left the domain of economics.
As I've said, problem with booms and bubbles is pricing's caused by the marginal moron. So you've got a lot of marginal morons out there in bubbles. So in a bubble, you get more and more morons. You're not gonna, maybe you only got 5% of people who are morons, but you only need 5% because they're the ones pushing the price up. The person who bids that massive price of the auction, they're the ones who set the price of the house. Then everybody claps.
But you call them the marginal moron, and I'm much less inclined to call them morons because they've been playing this game for 3 years and they've made more money off this bubble than I have. Because I've been scared for 3 years.
Yeah, but you can still be wrong and make money. Like making money and being right / being smart is certainly mutually exclusive.
So some of these players, these marginal players that are buying, they see things as clearly as we do. Their risk appetite is just different, and their preparedness. I tell you what, you're scared of. This is the free psychoanalysis session today.
Thank you, Sigmund.
I tell you what, you're scared of. You're scared of buying into this. It's absurd. Then it crashes, and then you're like, what a moron I was. I knew it was absurd. By the way, I'm scared of the same thing. I knew it was absurd. How could I ever have been dumb enough to buy this? But lots of people don't feel that thing. They're like, who cares? I'll make all this money on the way through.
We both lived through 99 and
but lots of people did. Lots of people did, and they're buying today.
People have short memories. I think either people weren't born, they could be Micah was 3 years old then, or you have short memories. And people have intentionally short memories because greed overcomes.
So I will say this. If we were smarter, we would say, we lived through this. We got to see it. We know what the dynamic or the trajectory of a bubble is. We can when we think it's a bubble, we got 3 years to ride this thing and make an absolute fortune. And I can tell you, SanDisk up 10x this year. The cooling businesses, I called the cooling businesses 6 months ago. I was nowhere near going to buy those things.
Yeah.
They've all gone up multiple X.
Yeah.
Like there was plenty of time for us to make money. It's just not our personalities.
On that, we got a very special guest coming up after the break. Do not switch off your dial. And we're back. We've got a very special guest in the studio. We've got a man who's a heartbeat and an election away from the Prime Ministership. Tim Wilson, obviously the Shadow Treasurer, spent 7 years at the IPA and became Australia's Human Rights Commissioner for, I think, 5 years or so. In that.
The appointment was for 5 years, but I actually did 2 years before I ran for Parliament.
Of course, 2016 you ran for Parliament in the seat of Goldstein, which is...
Goldstein.
Goldstein. Adir, you live in
Is that how you pronounce it?
It is. It's named after a woman by the name of Vida Goldstein. And when I was doing research for my first speech, I actually found an article where she was complaining about how her name was pronounced and specifically that it is Goldstein.
Well, I want to flag this, but she is wrong. Like, that is not how you pronounce it. So you pronounce it the way she pronounced it. It's great, but it's the only time I've ever heard that pronounced in that way. So well done.
I can assure you that that is explicitly how it is pronounced. I don't want to be difficult about it. I know we both live in the seat.
I would be. I mean, I was going to vote for you anyway. But now that you got the pronunciation right, there's another few votes.
There you go.
So Tim, obviously elected in 2016, and you're in Parliament for 6 years, and then in the teal apocalypse of 2022, for also the Scott Morrison disaster, you lost your seat, but you were the only person to actually get your seat back off a till in 2025. So that was an incredible effort. What was that like, getting back? Do you think you were done? Did you think you were going to make it back?
Well, it depends. If you asked me on 23 May 2022, I thought I was done. If you asked me in the year leading up, I was absolutely convinced I was going to win. But as it got closer and closer to election day, I felt it slipping. And then on election day, when the numbers were coming in and my opponent was celebrating her victory, and we were looking at the numbers and saying, this doesn't look right. We can see a path to victory. I wouldn't be calling it this early. And so basically from election night onwards, I absolutely believed I was going to win.
That's my favorite.
It took a month.
Well, that was one of my favourite parts of the entire election because there was not much to be happy about. And it was the early celebrations that had to be recanted. I mean, that's an awkward moment, I would have imagined, for someone.
I would say it's a very awkward moment for somebody, but it's also self-inflicted. I didn't do anything. In fact, I generally stayed pretty stum throughout the entire thing because you just got to let the votes, fight, work, and act for you.
Well, I know I've known you for quite a while. It's nice to see you again. And I'm going to lay you into a false sense of safety with some nice questions now, but we'll ask some tougher questions soon. But
just like being on 7:30.
Identical.
For insiders.
I tell you the difference. We'll stick to facts.
We're not Norway taxpayer funded, but that's
that's all true as well. We're not taxpayer funded.
Good idea.
But I do want to say this. A lot of the time we speak about startups or people that have built businesses, and one of the hallmarks of those people is they basically get metaphorically punched in the face every day and find a way to get back in the gutter, find a way to get back up every morning, get punched again, and they just persist, and it's the resilience and persistence ultimately that leads to success. There was no one between the election you lost, that election, and the election where you were re-elected into the seat that worked harder and was more persistent, that was out of office and had lost their seat harder than you worked. And I think that has got to be one of the key contributors to you being re-elected. A lot of people were voted out and quit politics. A lot of people were voted out and kind of just were depressed, but you just kind of hung in there and kept fighting, and nobody doubted that you were going to be giving it another red-hot shot at the next election. I think it's really impressive.
Well, that's very kind. My husband regularly reminds me he feels like we're punching the face often and get down and get back up. But one of my favourite quotes is, of course, by Oscar Wilde, which is, "We're all in the gutter and some of us are looking up at the stars." And so I think that's kind of like the startup culture and attitude, right? I'm just applying it to politics. Is you just can't accept if you believe in what you're doing, and it doesn't matter whether it's making a buck in your different way and your ideas and your values. Nothing will show it more than persistence and an endurance, because in politics, it's not for the faint-hearted. We all understand that, and I understand setting up a business is also not for the faint-hearted at times. You're often living off your credit card or borrowing just to stay alive. But people can see that sense of commitment and belief, and it's actually transformative because then other people want to join the journey with you.
And what's the thing that is most different today as we sit here? Mm-hmm. You think back to when you won your seat back at the last election and how you thought this term was going to play out. Yep. And now we're sitting here today, a year later or something. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest unexpected difference as we sit here today?
Well, if you ask most people, they would say what's happened with the federal budget. Whereas for the most part, I expected them to do this. I probably didn't expect it to be as brazen in terms of breaking promises as they did, but I was expecting this sort of a change. But I don't think a lot of other people could say that, particularly when the Prime Minister said 50 times over, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. There's obviously also, let's be honest about it, the rise of what I call the orange paddock of despair, which is another political force. But, it remains very much a question about whether that's got endurance. I'm not dismissing it. I respect, voters' views on these things very clearly. But I think what people want is a different direction for our country, and we need to be the agents for change.
Well, since you are hesitant to say One Nation, I'm going to say them.
Well, you know what it's like. You never broadcast your competitor.
That's true. But they are quite well known at the moment. I don't think I'm introducing anyone to them. But I will say this. So I'm not a supporter of One Nation, and I would love to have Pauline Hanson on the podcast, which hopefully we'll get, to ask her some very pointed questions. But the bottom line is that there are many disaffected voters in Australia, and she's getting them. And why are you not getting them? Why is she getting them and not you?
Well, I'll be blunt, which is in the lead up to last election, people expected us to win. We then lost very badly. I wasn't just the only one who won a seat back from a teal. I was the only one who won a seat, period, on my side. And people are disappointed. And I think they have every right to be. I'm disappointed. And so I think we need to prove to people, one, that we're worthy of their vote. Second, we need to put forward a clear program about where we're going to take the country. I was chatting to somebody in the car on the way over here, and he was sort of saying, well, I don't understand why people are going there. And I said, mate, if you're earning 60 grand, 120 grand combined household income, and you're trying to pay, you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month in mortgage, and it just keeps going up and up and up, you get shitty. There's no point pretending otherwise. And people are feeling the pinch much harder. They're going to the supermarket, they're getting less in their red basket, and they're saying something has to change. But at the moment, and we're trending there, and there's a lot of work to do, but at the moment, they're just looking for a sense of almost of exasperation for an alternative. And she's come along and said, I'm in one sense, a bright, new, shiny thing. Another level, I've been around a long time. But the challenge is she actually the answer to the problem? And ultimately, I understand the case for change, but we need to get back to making sure we're credible change that's actually going to improve people's lives.
Let me just ask you this last question.
Yep.
So, I mean, you lost good people over the last couple of years. I'll give you a few names that I think you've lost good people. Jason Falinsky up on the Northern Beaches, a
Good
great,
man that he
great
is.
guy. You lost Josh, obviously, in Kooyong. You lost Keith Wallahan, who I think is also hopefully
man.
he makes a comeback as well. I think he will. And the thing is this. I'll make another blunt comment to you. When people think about the values of the Liberal Party and the coalition more broadly, they don't think about your values. What if I said to you, the values that you have are not the values that people think of when they think of your party?
Well, that doesn't shock or surprise me. I think we need to be very clear-eyed about who we are, and this is why I don't believe in being one nation light, and I don't believe in being Labor light. I believe in being big Liberal, which means we're pro-enterprise, pro-family, pro-community, and pro-small business getting ahead. And if we're not enlivening that with our policy every day, we're not going to be in the position to win. I consider that to be central.
I lied about having one. I've got because we're on One Nation.
He's a constituent,
I'm
so I'm going to take it.
ask more One Nation. One more. So I saw a quote. There was an article that talked about One Nation getting traction because effectively they're calling Elbow a liar. Their big line. I mean, it's not a shock that this was the article they're calling. And there was this quote in that article that said the coalition claims. I think this was a sympathetic publication, by the way. It might have been the Australian, or the Finn. The coalition claims it can't run the same liar campaign because, as it is part of the perceived political establishment, such a move might backfire. Which I'd say to you, Adam, this is counter-positioning at its greatest, right? You literally, the argument here is you can't replicate the upstart because it damages you. Do you agree with that or not?
No, I don't. I mean, we have actually been very explicit in talking about the Prime Minister lying and breaking promises, and we've done it in Parliament. But I think there's something different. Labor has divided the country, particularly through this budget. They literally in the lead up to the budget tried to encourage families to have fights around the kitchen table. They've since turned people who've invested and saved and got ahead or in startups and pitted them against young Australians on a false promise that it's going to achieve greater home ownership. Then you've got the orange paddock over here, and they're not focused on uniting the country either. They're focused on fueling the rage and dividing Australians as well. We've got to be the solution which unites the country, talks about a way forward, and gets people to put their energy towards growth and opportunity again. Because when you have a country that's only fighting over who gets what share of a resources, it's not just misdirected energy, but it feeds resentment, division, and that isn't what I want for our country. That isn't what I think Australians want for their country, but they need to see a clear path to get ahead, and we have to provide that.
You got in your 2-minute answer. Tick the box on the... But I'm very sympathetic to what you just said.
In terms of the attack politics, I invented the Dim Jim name, and I think I've seen it in a few headlines, or we invented it.
No, it wasn't. I mean, don't give me credit for that.
Well, I hadn't heard anybody talk about that.
One of my favourite quotes is, I know I'm big on quotes, but is from Ronald Reagan and Truman, and it's, there is no limit to what a man can achieve, nor for how far he can go, if he does not mind who takes the credit.
Exactly.
So you can take the credit.
I take the credit for a lot of things around here. But
they should be using your quotes.
I've
Your
got
quotes are great.
I've got another name. I've got another one for you. Hopefully, if you do use this, and you may say it's a shit idea, but if you do use it, obviously just credit the Contrarians podcast. But
sure.
You can't say fire the liar, because apparently it's too far. Well, our nation's got that. How about you change it from, instead of Anthony Albanese, Anthony Albalaya? And we just talk about that.
I think if you're going to do that, it's got to kind of work.
I think it kind of works from a.
I think maybe we get away with Sneaky Albanese or something like that. But
doesn't roll off the tongue as well as Anthony Albalaya.
No,
What did Trump got a few good hits here?
Trump's amazing.
This is one of Trump's real skills. I think
it's
is coming
his
up with
greatest
these
skill.
names. Yeah,
I don't think governing's his greatest skill. I think nicknames his greatest skill.
Why do you think? We talk a lot about this liar thing.
Sure.
Why does it? I'm trying to ask this question because I don't want to. I don't want to give you free hits with these questions,
No,
but it is an intriguing question to ask. So we just spoke to these guys at the end of the table, and they're in a slightly younger demographic, and their view is it's not really what happened.
We're still young.
What? Well, at heart,
Adam thinks he's still young.
definitely thinks he's young.
How old are you now,
We're
Adam?
about the same age.
All right. We're definitely young.
Adam's 25 at heart, and so they, if you talk to Mike and Joel, they would say we don't think the blatant lie. I say it's a blatant lie because of the 50 times saying it's not going to happen. We don't think the blatant lie is going to have much of an effect at the next election on our age group and demographic. I've heard that a lot, and so the question is whether that's true. And if it's true, what does that say about the need for any integrity in politics at all? Because if that doesn't have any effect, then frankly, Bill Shorten should have lied to the electorate as opposition leader and made sure he was elected and then done whatever he wanted subsequently.
So trust takes a long time to build up, but when it's broken, it's very hard to repair. So the challenge for somebody like Albo is, all right, he's lied. Are people going to vote on the lie? No, I don't think they are going to vote on the lie. But everyone is going to look at every single thing he says from here on with a high degree of distrust. So there's two parts to any sort of political story or voter behaviour. One is who they have to be off first. They're off the government and Labor Party now. The question then is, as you said before, who's the beneficiary and who's going to offer the compelling case about a way forward for the country? I don't think Labor's got answers. I don't think the Orange Paddock has got answers. But we then have to fill that void and then actually excite people and energise people. Because if you're a startup or a small business or people who want to get ahead, we should be backing in a self-starter economy, but we need aggressive policies that show that.
And if you say trust takes a long time to build, I would say trust goes up the stairs and then off the cliff on the way down.
Fair enough.
And so what do people not trust the coalition with right now?
Well, I don't think we've, post losing that last election, because there was a lot of hope that we would win it, that we have our act together. There's no point.
I would agree. It looks, as someone on the outside, like with some visibility inside, but on the outside,
sure.
Yeah, it looks like this is a party that is not yet organised to govern. That's what it looks like from the outside.
Sure, I'm not going to seek to dissuade. That's what we have to demonstrate over the remainder of this year and next year. We've got our act together, that we're focused, and that's enlivened by policy. I think one of the great errors of politics is you think you unite a political party or a voting constituency around a person. Very rare, and it always ends up imploding. You can do it around a policy program because it's actually then not about the individual. It's about what you're trying to achieve together and what you're trying to achieve for the public. That's what's important.
We talk about the branding point. We talk a lot about brand on the show, and we talk about three characteristics of what makes a great brand. One is acquisition costs, one is merely charge a premium, none of which is really that relevant for politicians. But one that is really relevant is forgiveness. And great brands have lots of forgiveness. And you say that there were two great brands of Australian politics, Liberal and Labor. And I'd say one of those brands, the Liberal brand, trashed itself through Scott Morrison, and to an extent, Peter Dutton. And I know you are on a certain side of the Liberal Party and not necessarily aligned with those guys, and you're an assistant minister in the Morrison government, so I don't hold you personally responsible for any of this. But the Scott Morrison government destroyed a lot of faith of people like me. People who call it centre-right or maybe call it radical centrists.
With the multi-ministry game that
not even
played.
that was irrelevant.
That wasn't great news.
Partly what they did during COVID.
Just be clear, I'm not forgiving it. That only came out afterwards. So the voting behaviour happened before.
But I think that does that.
He was hated well before.
Yes, but the brand kept getting damaged.
It didn't help
by him after the election.
But forget that. But like he was voted out. I think he didn't lose his own seat, but everybody else lost their seat. He was in a pretty safe seat. But the problem with the Liberal Party now is Liberals were the highest spending, highest taxing government through the Morrison era. Maybe now it's gotten a bit higher, but certainly to that point it was the highest spending. And this is pre-COVID even, when we didn't have this ridiculous emergency. Then we had JobKeeper. It was a disgraceful policy that was the biggest spending policy ever that was actually miscosted. So you had the Liberal Party, which was always the brand of we're going to be fiscally responsible, and the Liberal Party trashed this brand. And I think the voters have just said, well, I can't trust Labor with the economy now because for reasons we'll get to. I can't trust Liberals because what I did over COVID. Or maybe we got this Pauline Hanson. She can't be any worse than these guys. Is that not what's happening?
That's part of it. And as somebody who sat inside that government and argued for us to curtail JobKeeper, particularly in the second year when it was clear that it was being overpaid, and I don't want to breach confidences, but getting a lot of pushback on that, we spent too much money. There is no point pretending otherwise. And I think we need to be honest about it. I think one of the most important things going to point of forgiveness is you actually need to start by acknowledging errors that were made. There were errors made. And some of that was driven by the moment being people didn't know, particularly in the early days, what was going to come with COVID. I don't think that's acceptable in the second year of COVID, just as I don't think what happened at the state government level was acceptable in the second year of COVID. So to rebuild that trust, you have to start by acknowledging that. When I relaunched my campaign for Goldstein in 2022, while I acknowledged that most of the factors that drove votes away from us didn't come from me personally, the first thing I did was acknowledge it, thank the electorate for the lesson and that it was learned, because it is really important that people hear that, so then they're interested in what you've got to say going to the next point. So yes, we need to rebuild our economic credibility. It's about acknowledging that too much money was spent, and I believe that very strongly.
If you look at this particular area now, and I'm going to talk about tax policy in a second, but we've got a deficit, call it a loan to banks, to creditors, so to bondholders of $1 trillion, going to $1.2 trillion in the next 3 years. That's effectively a massive intergenerational debt bomb being passed over to the next generation. So we've got this massive debt we've got to cover. And Australia's not alone here, clearly. Actually, Australia's relatively low compared to most other countries, but
that doesn't matter.
We're still high.
We should judge ourselves against our own performance. 2007, we were net positive.
Yeah.
Now we're trending towards, by the end of this decade, 1.25 trillion.
And I couldn't agree more. But to fix that, you've got to do probably two things. You've got to spend less, and you may or may not have to tax more, but you certainly have to spend less.
Definitely spend less.
Where do we start spending less?
So the first thing we have to target is the naked corruption. And I say this very deliberatively. You've got between the NDIS fraud and corruption, which, depending on which estimate you use, is between 10 to 20% of a growing budget, now comfortably above $50 billion. You've got replication of the activity going there to home aged care packages. You've got phantom children enrolled in childcare, etc. Just targeting waste and corruption would save you tens of billions of dollars. But at the moment, the schemes are just completely open for doing so. We can then go through specific measures where we take this one out and that one out, but it's got to start with addressing where honest taxpayers' money goes to dishonest activity. Think about the $15 billion that was handed to organised crime through the CFMEU Labor cartel. I just find it extraordinary that is not considered.
Would you cancel the SRL, the $100 billion SRL?
Well, that's a state project, so I can't cancel
but it's being funded by the
but I wouldn't give any money to it. No.
Yeah.
Very clear about that.
So you got Dutton in the last election had a sort of half-assed policy of reducing public service, winding back work from home, all very sensible policies. He was completely massacred by everyone. These were hardly controversial. Heaven forbid we suggest that people who get paid by taxpayers actually rock up to work. But the electorate seemed to hate it, but it wasn't sold right. Would you back this again?
Well, I think it's a long way of looking at it. I look at policy based on what is the outcome we're trying to achieve. And so... you need a number of public servants you need to deliver a public outcome. I think AI, a lot of public servant jobs are process driven. So there's an opportunity to say, well, how do we do some things more efficiently? I said this at the National Press Club recently, and that we need to be honest about the fact that if someone can do a job more efficient, or AI can do a job or remove a process, then we should be looking first and foremost at can we be redeploying that person towards an outcomes orientated role to improve outcomes for the Australian people, because I think a lot of good money is being thrown after process that we could drive further faster forward.
But let's ask that question in a more brutal way. So basically, there's a big federal public service. Public service jobs are driving almost all employment growth in Australia.
Unfortunately.
Health and education, essentially.
The Liberal Party is never going to be the premier of the ACT ever again in my lifetime. Maybe I'll be wrong, but it ain't looking good for you.
Mark Parton is a great leader of the opposition.
I'm sure he is great. And there can be fantastic people that flap their arms really fast, but they're never going to fly, okay? And so that's the reality.
I've never heard that expression.
And so I think I just might have made it up now. And so, but the bottom line is this. These public servants, they don't vote for you. And there's a lot of them, and more and more and more. And it seems to me they don't vote for you. Am I wrong? Do they vote for you? What percentage of voting for you?
Some do, but that
20%?
Well,
2%?
breaking down public servants and their voting behaviour in the ACT is challenging. But at the end of the day, I get the point you're making. Yes, all right, they may or may not vote for us, but is that really the determinant which we should be governing? I don't think so.
Well, it means it means you can significantly reduce their numbers once you're elected because they aren't voting for you anyway.
But that's also why I say right from the get-go, our focus in the public service should be what should be necessary to achieve an outcome that's consistent with what we want for people. If we have people needlessly employed, doing nothing, contributing nothing, that are just there to prop up the voting bloc of the ALP or the Teals or anything else, of course I don't believe that's the basis in which we should employ people. What's the outcome we're trying to achieve? I think AI has an enormous opportunity to streamline the public service and actually do something really powerful. Because at the moment, if you're an ordinary Australian, as it were, an everyday Australian, and you're engaging with bureaucracy, your job is to conform to the bureaucracy. AI enables the bureaucracy to wrap around you and actually give you support on your needs. And I think that's actually really exciting. We shouldn't be afraid of it.
I agree.
So we talk about needing to cut costs, which I think we all agree on. I think most Australians agree on this. Then you've got the revenue side. And part of the revenue side is taxing people more. But the other part of the revenue side is...
It may have to involve that. It could also involve growth.
Well, the other part is, and this is where probably I've had my biggest disagreement with you, and this is back in your last campaign with your namesake, Jeff, I think it was 2019, where you killed Labor's suggestion to... Essentially how it works with superannuations. If you're a superannuant and you own shares in a company that pays dividends, because you're not paying tax, the government sends you a check because you can't get your dividend. We'll give you money for what would have been the dividend because you...
Basically, you get a rebate for the tax the company paid because the amount the company was charged as a percentage is higher than your percentage and you're considered to be the shareholder. So why should the ultimate shareholder who owns shares in a company be taxed at a higher rate just because the profits pass through the company first?
That is a little introduction to dividend imputation, everybody.
Yes, exactly.
So I think let me talk about broader superannuation. So
I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying that's the philosophy.
So we're essentially giving money to really rich people is part of the problem there. But if you look at superannuation...
Well, actually, that's part of the folly is actually that thinking. But anyway, keep going.
If you look at superannuation in general, so this is obviously a Paul Keating Labor Party... it was introduced in, I think it was in the early 90s, the superannuation guarantee. Essentially, ostensibly, the PJK's argument for superannuation is we've got this big pension problem. If we get people to save their own money, we'll pay much less of a pension. And if you do this is some really rough numbers.
It's taxation by a different mechanism, essentially. Instead of the government having to pay pensions, you force employers to pay a superannuation tax to individuals. That means governments don't have to pay pensions in future.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What now is bigger? The amount that's paid out in the pension, if everyone got a pension, or the tax concessions?
That's not what you need to look at is how much has the pension dropped, as in percentage of people on the pension dropped.
Hang on, you're dealing as politician to politician. Neither one of you is going to answer the other one's questions.
I'm happy to answer your question. I'm happy to answer your question, but the reality is that we now pay more out in superannuation tax concessions, and we've driven more and more behaviour into super than we now pay out in the pension, or if everybody got a pension.
I think we're talking the same thing.
And so the argument that somehow it saved the taxpayer money, and foregone tax is not the same thing as money going out. But every country needs some sort of pension-based or superannuation-based system to support people in their older age. People are now dying with more, basically their entire principle intact. And that's one of the big challenges of superannuation because people actually have more than they need, and we continue to increase the amount people contribute.
Well, I think we're talking the same thing. So
what's your problem?
I think my point is the pension has gone from 77% people when Keating introduced it to 67%. So about a $10 billion cost reduction, and super costs is about $50 billion a year, partly because of the stuff that you were able to stop in 2019. This is the greatest tax fraud in Australia. This is $40 billion being given to people who obviously are too rich to be on the pension, and this is excluding their principal residence because it's not counted for the pension.
No, there's a lot of people in part pensions as well. So,
but regardless, this isn't people who are on death on the verge of poverty, can't afford to.
Can I just clarify that this is the great folly of what Labor didn't understand in 2019. They said, it's all just people who are rich with yachts. But what they wouldn't listen to was the people who had turned up to our inquiry who said, actually, my income is $25,000 a year. $8,000 of that is the refundable franking credits, and I would be pushed below the poverty line if you change the law this way. And they just said, nah, you're all rich, forget about it. And the thing was, there are a lot more of those people than you realise. Yes, there are absolutely some self-managed superannuants who are doing well, just like there is in the rest of the economy. But a lot of people, it was the difference between whether they're above or below the poverty line, and Labor wouldn't listen to them. And I would really counsel, listen to them.
That's almost a side point, though. The point is superannuation is a $50 billion cost to the economy by way of people paying less tax. And it saves us $10 billion, so this is $40 to plus billion we're out of pocket. That's 10x what the capital gains tax discount removal is going to cost. So there's far better ways to create an equitable system. Like, I think the biggest problem with what Chalmers and Albanese have done is they've tried to claim this as a fair tax system. We're trying to make it fair. We've actually made it more unfair is part of the problem. And part of the great unfairness is this huge superannuation cost of $50 billion to people who in many cases are quite wealthy because the $10 million Vaucluse house isn't counted in the calculation.
But is your sales pitch? By the way, I just want to say this. Each side has got their extreme examples. One's got yachts. One's got, without the $4,000, I'm eating, stale bread or whatever it is. The truth is always somewhere in between these things. But is your point basically dividend imputation should be progressively reduced to save tax money?
I think dividend imputation is like the thin end of the wedge. The superannuation as a whole needs to be looked at. Like, how can we be ignoring something that costs so much when we're
that's
stuffing
a tough
around with $4 billion?
Because that is Tim's constituency. So, what's your view on the untouchable nature of superannuation concessions?
Well, I think any conversation around tax reform has to start with the baseline, which is what are we trying to achieve? I keep coming back to that central proposition, what are we trying to achieve? Because at the moment we have a thicket or a patchwork of policy that is all based on interest. Labor Party is the party of industry super funds. And look at it, every time they make a decision, it's how do we get maximum amount of money into the industry super funds, which then get paid out through marketing expenses. There's about $500 million over the past decade of your retirement savings, which, what shock, goes to the unions who then campaign to keep Labor in office so that they can compel legally more people to contribute more money into industry super funds. It's just a giant money laundering washing machine.
You're preaching to the choir on that.
I know, but I'm not necessarily sure that every listener or viewer understands that. So I think there's that one problem. And then, of course, the other side is you've got self-managed superannuants who vary. Some people have a lot less than even $500,000. But I actually think what we should be aiming for is to encourage people to have their own self-managed superannuation fund. They should be incentivised, of course, to make life decisions that contribute to it. But I think we've also got the priority around superannuation wrong, where at the moment we say superannuation is the most important financial imperative in your life. It's simply not true. The most important financial imperative in your life outside of good education is actually to buy your home, because you get the benefits of that in your working life and retirement. And a retirement system relies on three pillars. One is your superannuation. The other is a pension for those who are less well off. And the third one is that it's assumed you own your own home, because nobody will retire in greater poverty than people who are renting in retirement.
And you're a great policy campaigner. And Jeff Wilson is a surprisingly good policy campaigner. And frankly, you had a big role in flipping the policy that Adam referred to, but you couldn't flip this CGT/negative gearing stuff. It seems to have not penetrated the armour of Labor. And my view is, you can comment on this or not, but
sure.
My view is Labor saw what happened in Albury, Wodonga, that electorate, where you guys lost the seat and it went to One Nation, and thought, no one's going to listen to the coalition anyway, no matter what we do. And I think do you think they've proven to be correct on that? Why weren't you able to flip it with Jeff this time?
So firstly, November is when they made this decision, well before the Farrer by-election.
So you think it's an older decision than they said it was?
Yeah, well, they started the conversation earlier. They might have made the decision later. But remember, the franking credits inquiry was led up to the 2019 election. They weren't in government. So what we did by flipping it, as you put it, was we defeated them getting elected to government. This time they're in government, a budget's been handed down that includes these measures, but that doesn't mean that that's the end of the process, because to me what it reveals is a fundamental lack of engagement with our politics. Politics is much about what you believe in as who you mobilise, and what the real problem in this one is, the self-starting community, the startups, the small businesses, all the people it hits are disorganised. You're all busy getting on with your life, and so they've gone, we can hit them, and what are they going to do? And I'll be polite and say, every time I have tried to engage with small business to organise them, saying this is the sort of stuff that's coming at them, it's like, we don't worry about it, we'll be right. And now all of a sudden people are realising that this is a serious deal. We can't change the law till the next election. We've made a commitment that we're going to repeal these measures, but we also need to talk about how we're going to build a tax system, an economy that's outcomes orientated, because what we actually need is an economy that's geared towards growth again, because I don't want to increase taxes. I think you already work hard enough and pay enough taxes. What I want is a growing economy that's a bit more dynamic than it is now, where people are contributing because they're earning more, they're growing, and we're succeeding together as a country.
We should pay less. I'm sure we agree. We should pay less tax. But I'll say something that you'll be very excited about me saying, which is not only is the tech industry not well organised, but where it is well organised, like with the Tech Council, the immediate past president is now an advisor to a government organisation. And so it's going to be pretty tough to get some hate directed towards the government from that corner of society.
I mean, you've got to understand, Labor Party is a corrupt patronage network, and it really is. They put their people into positions to silence those organisations. So the gas industry is a classic example of this. The entire Australian energy producers, which is the gas industry, I'm not arguing for or against them, is filled with Labor Party people. And so they do nothing. They leak information to the Labor Party against the gas industry, even though they're paid by the gas industry. The Tech Council, I won't say I have evidence of the same sort of behaviour. If you want people to take you seriously, particularly as an industry association, you need to stand up, be counted, and fight for your members. Instead, what they do is acquiesce. A lot of Tech Council members went off and backed the Teals to remove Liberals and now turning around and say, we want Liberal policy. Guys, you made your bed. Time to stand up, lead, and fight for a future.
So you're obviously scathing of the Labor Party
and the Teals and
it's not for me to defend any of them. But I will say this: like, we would love to get someone from the Labor Party. Jim Chalmers would be great.
We asked your colleagues in the Labor Party to come on. None of them will come on, which says a lot. These are taxpayer-funded people who won't speak to Australians.
Labor knows who they govern for. Labor governs for public servants, the unions, and welfare recipients. I'm not criticising them, but they know who their constituency is. I think what we've lost, and I've said this publicly many times, is we have lost sight of who it is we stand for. I don't believe I have, but others have. We fight for small businesses in particular and the self-starters of this country, the people who grow the economy, employ Australians, back themselves in, and that's who I want to support. And so we need. So I'm not surprised Labor's turning around saying we don't want to talk to that
Well, I would love to
constituency.
have Jim Chalmers or Charlton on here telling me how terrible you are and how hopeless the Liberal Party is, and I'll let them say that as well. But the thing is, it's basically impossible to get them to come on. And I'm a centrist. I'm sympathetic to some policies in the Liberal Party, and frankly, in the past, I've been sympathetic to some policies in the Labor Party. But
that's because you think for yourself.
It's just impossible. It's impossible.
We'll
to
vote
get
for
them on.
whoever's. I think both of us speak for you as well. We'll vote for whoever's close to the centre. And if you look at the last
Exactly.
last
That's
election,
a great way of saying it.
How do you define the centre, by the way? Because this is, I think, one of the great. Everyone says that.
Yeah. Well, this is how this is the party I would love to see. I think you personally probably are very aligned with this, but unfortunately there's a big MAGA element of the Liberal Party that isn't. But it's a party that balances the budget, that taxes people fairly, that doesn't impose 47% taxes for a high risk asset
or income,
or income,
or 30% taxes to middle class people,
and that is also called socially progressive, that is in favour of abortion, that favours gay rights, that is
socially. Would you say progressive, or would you say socially respectful? Because I don't want to run your life.
Yeah.
How you live your life is up to you, and I respect that. And I also don't want it in return.
No, but I would say more than respectful, because there are some people in society, I think it's actually a relatively thin layer that can't survive for themselves.
Sure.
And I think you have to take care of them. And I think public healthcare should be free for people if they want to use that. And I think education should be free if people want. I believe in those things. And
to a degree. Presumably you don't support the NHS.
No, I don't.
Which is the worst health system in the world because it's free.
If you go back 20 years...
Well, the NHS's problem isn't that it's just free. It's to do with the lack of flexibility within the system, and they basically don't have a private system that co-locates alongside. Anyway, we can talk about
that. That is the problem. But 20 years ago in Australia, you would say, I mean, I don't want to say 20 years ago, but like, this is a fact. Like, there was I know a bit about the public health system. There was a public health system that was government funded. People always complain there's not enough money, not enough beds. That's life, okay? It was government funded. It worked well. It was apolitical. That's a big thing. There was no politics in the, like, there might have been party politics, but there was no fighting against the Enlightenment politics in the medical system. So that's part of what I mean by centrism. Like, I don't think leave it all to the market economy and like God will take care of the rest. Like I think you need to provide a safety net for some people who really do need a safety net.
Sure, but I think everybody accepts that. The question is, where are the incentives? And if the incentives are to sit down or simply to wait to receive or be dependent, that's something I can't sort of support. The incentives, particularly for those who can, should be how do you get ahead? How do you provide for yourself and your family? And because if we don't have a nation of people who aspire to stand up on their own 2 feet, they'll never be in the best position to help others.
Everyone talks about tax. Adam's the boss of this podcast, so I always have to ask him for permission to ask questions.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
You can't. Well, you're good at asking
I just throw
questions.
it in.
No, you've been very candid. So I'm going to ask you a bit of an obtuse question, but I think you'll get the gist of it. So we're talking about tax take, and we've got a particular view of something I'm going to mention, which is this. So I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. If you own a property and you've got a backyard, and I go into your backyard, dig holes in it, and pull out the minerals inside your backyard, should I give most of the profits to you for taking out those minerals?
Well, so currently the laws establish that you pay it to the state governments.
Oh, I don't pay much though. I pay 7.5% of my revenue to the state government.
What about offshore gas? Let's pretend your backyard was an offshore, was an ocean.
But broadly, I just want to ask you, because I'm not going to say...
So I think it's more... The gas example is a better one.
But I'm not going to say come and define policy on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm saying hypothetical. Because maybe I'll say it like this. The Norwegians... What they think is the resources of the country belong to everyone, including future generations that haven't been born yet of Norwegians. And so whoever they let immigrate into their country. And so we will make sure that there's money for them. And they have a particular way of taxing, which is effectively taking most of the profits of the company. And so philosophically, how do you feel about what is fair for Australians to receive of resources that are really owned by current and future generations of Australians?
So I absolutely believe that the resources of this country belong to this nation. The question is we need to get the companies to get in and extract them. The government doesn't have the technology to do that, nor the expertise. So we need to work with partners to do it, and to do it in a way that exports them and or uses them for domestic consumption where royalties are paid to the Australian people. That isn't in dispute.
Yeah, we're all in agreement with that.
We're all in agreement with that. And so let's use the example of the gas sector, which is a topical conversation, and it's misrepresented that they pay only a small amount of tax from the petroleum resource rent tax, ignoring the fact that the PRRT is one of the smaller taxes, and that means there's more company tax paid at the other end at a higher rate of 30%. And so the question then is, do we want taxes paid at the higher end when people make a profit, or do we want them paid through a much more narrow royalty scheme?
What do you think?
Well, all I want is revenue to be paid. 40% of the revenue of the gas industry is paid in taxes. So it's not how it's represented, but that's actually the truth. That's demonstrated by ATO data, etc. And so 40%, roughly seems about right, unless we want to shift, as they do in Norway, the risk. What they do in Norway is they say the government's going to take all the risk, therefore they take all the reward, where we say the company should take the risk, therefore they take a chunk of the reward.
And Norway has a massive sovereign wealth fund.
Yes.
And we've got a joke of a sovereign wealth fund by comparison.
That's not true, actually. It's just how you want to characterise it. One, we have things like the Future Fund, but we also have superannuation. Superannuation is a sovereign wealth fund. It's just that we hold it in individual accounts rather than giving government all control over it. That's where there's this misunderstanding. There's a massive divide about how we run our systems, and so just drawing simple comparisons doesn't work that way. Because the whole point of a sovereign wealth fund is to provide for future generations. What's the point of a superannuation scheme? Well, to obviously manage people's challenges and future generations.
There's lots of complexity with all of these bits and pieces. But I'll say this in the simplest possible way.
Yep.
The people those two guys at the end of the table, those young guys, they own the iron ore in Western Australia, along with all other Australians.
No, actually, the iron ore in Western Australia. Oh, hang on. You've got to get dependent on what type of mineral, because they're mostly owned by state governments, not by the federal government.
But ultimately, I think the stuff in the ground in Australia is owned by Australians.
Yep.
Yet, the richest people in this country are the people that dig holes and pull our resources out of the ground and sell them as rocks. That means relatively unprocessed. I was shocked when I found out a few years ago there's basically ships full of rocks that go over to China. That's what we're selling.
This is news to you?
Well, it was a few years ago. I was shocked. I never would anticipate so little was done with the rocks.
Yep.
These are the richest people in Australia. How can these be the richest people in Australia? Doesn't it say, like, what? I want to do that. I want that job. Let me pull out your minerals from the ground and be the richest person in Australia.
Sure. I mean, the decisions that are made in past generations, because a lot of these decisions were made a long time ago. We can't just unpack and undo. But the question is why? Firstly, they've invested and they've created the pathway to export the minerals. There's no point pretending otherwise. They've had record high prices for a long period of time. That's another reason why, from other countries buying them in, which we get a benefit as Australians too by the revenue that goes into state and federal budgets. But if you process it onshore, is it necessarily have the same demand from other countries? Because then you've got to process pay for the processing, and then the demand has got to be there, and you've got to pay for the shipping and freight.
I don't know, this is not my industry, but what I know is I want the richest people. You complained, Adam, when the richest guy in the world or France or something is a luxury goods dude, right? Bernie Arnault. Yeah. It's not good, right? It is not good in this country that the richest people dig holes.
I agree with you on that, but the answer isn't solely just about tax. We also need to increase the competitiveness and dynamism of our economy. We've done the complete reverse. And I said before, one of the things I wanted was a more dynamic economy, which is one of the reasons why the federal budget is so bad, because it directly targets and attacks the startup community. And when you think about it, there was a study by the E61 Institute that was done a while ago that looked at which companies were most likely to be productive, and they were those in the first 5 years. Which ones were most disproportionately like to employ people, companies in their first 2 years. And the ones that were most likely to be productive are also those that had employee share ownership schemes, because you get interest in alignment. I want interest in alignment to grow the future of the economy, and instead they're being targeted.
Does the rest of your party agree with you?
I think they do, but I think I'm more laser-like focused on this point.
I think one of the great problems with the budget, was, and certainly in the explanation of it, is what Chalmers and Albanese have tried to do, and I don't think they've really succeeded. They have succeeded with some people, is they try to make this look like this is an intergenerational budget. We're coming to the rescue of young people. But in reality, they actually, pretty much every single policy is anti-young person. They've kept super, as I said, untouched. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a Liberal policy as well, but Labor's kept super untouched. They've grandfathered negative gearing, so if you're old and rich, you can keep your negative gearing. And you've also grandfathered the CGT valuation.
You can be young and rich and keep your negative gearing as well.
Realistically. And they've also grandfathered valuation. So Adir and I are fine because our business get valued next year. But if you started a business now, you're stuffed. So,
unless you're a valuer.
Yeah, and it's a great one. Yeah, starting a valuation business.
Yeah. It's going to be a good year. It'll be a good year for service providers adding agency costs to the economy.
You know full well that the lawyers and the accountants always win.
Yeah.
So if you look at virtually every policy that Labor has done has really been an anti-young person policy and a pro-old person policy. But one of the great criticisms of the Liberal Party has been, you've been the same. Are you willing to actually take a view that really does try and break this intergenerational inequity? And it's going to be a hard decision. Are you going to hit super? Are you going to hit the primary residence? Are you going to hit negative gearing for everyone? It's going to be one of those hard decisions that is going to be unpopular for a cohort of the population.
Well, I'll start where I keep coming back to. What's the objective? Which is, I want whatever generation of Australians you're in to be in a position to get ahead and to be able to work hard, and that hard work actually pays off. And then I'm interested in how you then design a tax system that empowers you. Now, I'm but one person. You need another at least 75 votes in the House plus another 37 votes in the Senate to get something through. But I think I think the big thing out of the last election was too many of my colleagues tried to play a small target strategy. I disagree with it then. I disagree with it now. I have a very strong view we need to be a big target, and we need to offer a compelling vision where young Australians, older Australians go, doesn't matter how hard you've got to apply your effort, you'll get ahead, because hard work should pay off. People should be respected and they should feel in control of their lives.
So Joel at the end of the table, he's the one on the left with the long hair.
And the orangey type.
Yeah. So Joel, I think Joel might be 25. Is that something in that vicinity?
I'm 27 on Saturday.
Happy birthday. This is a nice birthday present, because your birthday present is that this shadow treasurer is going to get you a house. So
that would be really good.
So when you're the treasurer of Australia, how is Joel going to be able to afford a house in ways that he can't today and has no hope of being able to buy a house today.
Where does he want to buy?
He wants to buy in the city.
Right. And what does he want to buy?
He wants to buy a two-bedroom apartment.
Like
Is
a
that right,
townhouse
Joel?
apartment. Could go Brunswick, Coburg, I don't mind.
He wants to be north. So he's
Okay.
probably not going to vote for you realistically. but that's okay because, you know, being
might now.
being elected is all about making things better for all Australians,
I
not
agree
just
with
the
that.
people that voted for you,
I
right?
agree with
Unlike this, the government in Victoria does not agree with that, as you know.
So Labor knows who they govern for,
But
and it's
you-
for a narrow subset.
But so what, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but like realistically speaking, there's all this talk about all sorts of ways that Joel is going to be able to get a house or his townhouse or his apartment. How's it going to be different when you're the treasurer?
Well, the difference is, one, we've said that we're not going to allow migration to continue to overshoot while we haven't got the volume of housing stock. And that's a balancing act because we need people to be able to build houses and the skills to do so. But you can't, if you keep overshooting migration, which is what we've been doing, while not building new housing stock, you only get one impact.
So
right?
we should ask Joel as you say these things. So Joel, would you be comfortable with migration being reduced if there's an argument that it makes housing more accessible for you?
Yeah, if I resonate with the balancing act rather than migration bad, and that's the only reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
not
we're
saying migration
sophisticated
bad.
people here,
Yeah,
right?
no, he's very sophisticated. But I think most people are very reasonable, like Joel, where people want a balance. They understand that the job of the country is first and foremost to provide for its citizens, but that is not absent generosity and wanting to work with
But
people.
don't lose Joel with the politics stuff. You've got him on the hook right now. You've got him on the hook. So keep going. What else?
Well, I was going to say he's probably not interested in our $5 billion for building new housing stock in new suburbs if he wants to live. That's why I asked.
Would you be
live?
prepared to live 15 kilometres away from the CBD? Is that about the right distance? Or
Well, it
25?
depends on which city you're in.
25 kilometres away.
25's losing me.
25
50
because there's no transport infrastructure in this country, in this state, to get people into the city.
That is one of the biggest problems, one of the greatest acts of negligence of the state government, particularly when I was going around, because the suburban rail loop starts in my electorate just. And I'm always amazed, a number of people say, people in the north and west have no public transport infrastructure. Why are we getting this epic money pit when they haven't even got basic infrastructure? So
he agrees, but he's not going to be sold on living 25 kilometres away. So keep going. What else you got?
So is he got? Are you a good employer who offers employees share ownership schemes?
Well, we don't at the moment because it's early days, but tell me about that. That's interesting.
Well, there's a current system where you have employee share ownership schemes, and as part of the income that Joel earns, part of he gets is equity in the business. And so as a consequence, he would normally pay it at the capital gains tax discounted rate of essentially 23.5%. Under Labor, it'll be 47%. We'll reduce it back down to 23.5%. So if you were a good employer and he was working hard and he was able to secure an equity share in the business and cashed out an exit point, you would be successful. But Joel would also be
But I think
successful.
he's even better for you because unless I'm wrong, Joel, do you run your own business effectively?
There you go.
Is that right?
I contract for Mike here.
Yeah. So Mike is the other guy.
that
That's
Mike's
Mike.
right?
Mike's the
Does
producer.
he offer employee share?
Mike's Mike miraculously, he miraculously managed to buy a house, and so what is going to be good for Mike? Like so Mike owns a house, he runs his own business. That's his
Yes.
thing. What are you going to do for him as treasurer?
It goes back to the same point around CGT, but if you cash out your business at the moment, from a future date, it will now be indexed versus saying it should be 23.5%.
So he's going to pay more tax on selling his.
He's going to pay more tax, and so a lot more tax. So that's important. But you said he's already bought his house, so why am I going to encourage him about how to buy?
What
another
about
house?
what do you think is going to happen to his interest rates under
Well,
your treasurership?
The primary driver of interest rates at the moment is federal and state government spending. So we're going to cut that, and I've already gone through some of the examples of what we need to do, which will put downward pressure on interest rates. Because, the Reserve Bank is meeting tomorrow. I don't know when this is broadcast.
It'll be broadcast as the Reserve Bank, isn't it?
But whatever it does, we will not get interest rates down if you don't get inflation down. You're not going to get inflation down unless you actually contain public spending. Australia is suffering as one of the highest rates of inflation in the developed world. It's been persistent and it's going to continue in that trajectory until you get public spending under control. We've got other factors internationally as well going on, but they're a distraction from the core problem which existed before those international events.
And do you think, and can I just ask both of you guys something. This is I mean, you can say no to this, right? I mean, it was an honest podcast. Like, does this conversation change your perception of the Liberal Party at all, or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's fantastic that you're coming on the pod, and it's very interesting hearing your thoughts, like direct from the horse's mouth, I guess. Like, it's really interesting. So I appreciate you coming on.
And Joel, it might be fair to say you're not naturally a coalition voter. I'm making an assumption.
Naturally, no.
But what? And so does this change it, or is this consistent with your existing views? Like, how does it relate?
I'm fairly on the same page with Mike. It's nice to humanize it because the algorithms that I'm fed, it's very demonizing of all kind of liberal activity. So it's always nice to talk to a voice.
Can I actually, that you just touched on a really interesting point, which is the algorithms that's being fed to you. And like, I get algorithms fed to me too. And I actually often, should we say, cross-reference or check, because some people say, all I'm getting in my algorithm at the moment is content from Labor or the Orange Paddock or somewhere else.
You'll see a lot of Contrarians podcast in your algorithm.
Do I follow it?
Comment on every post.
And there you go. And what is the handle?
How do I know? I'm the least involved in this podcast. You're seeing every bit of contribution I make, you're currently experiencing.
On LinkedIn, it's just the Contrarians podcast with Adam and Adir. And I'm sure if you search it, you'll find it everywhere.
There you go. We'll make sure we find it.
That's why he gets the big bucks.
But I think this is a really big problem with modern society, where we have this reinforcement of our value sets or ideas. And I noticed that particularly post-budget, I made sure that I actively followed every single small business voice, like on Instagram, and so now you get constant reinforcement on that, which I love, but you've also got to make sure you don't fall into the echo chamber. And that's why, and with the media market as fragmented as it is now, much more fragmented, believe it or not, guys, Mike and Joel, there was a time where you picked up the newspaper and everybody basically read the same thing, and 6 o'clock news came on and everybody basically heard the same thing. And now we're all being fed our own individual media, and it just makes it impossible to know what people are actually saying or doing.
That's amazing, Tim. We're so grateful for you being so generous with your time, spending an hour on the pod. We're certainly kicking you home at the next election. We think you're to be an amazing treasurer and hopefully Prime Minister one day.
That's
hopefully quite soon at this rate. Adir.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, it's fantastic to have you here. And hopefully, we just try to have like very open kind of candid conversations. I think you've heard from these guys, like there's work to do.
Yep.
If the coalition and the Liberal Party is going to rehabilitate their brand amongst young people.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I wrote a book in 2020 called The New Social Contract, Renewing the Liberal Vision for Australia, and it was explicitly about how we achieve intergenerational fairness, and particularly around how we empower young Australians to own their own home. And it's about how we get our priorities right, our incentives right, so that we can grow the economy and give people a sense of hope, because that's what people need to keep going. We've all got to, be fed and watered and have a home, and I'm not disputing that. But hope is central to young Australians wanting to get ahead.
And just to reiterate, we'll be very fair to a Labor Party person, to a One Nation, to a Teal.
Not to a Green.
Well, we don't want
They're not welcome.
We don't want Greens. Well, we don't want them on the podcast, to be honest. But but anyone else, we'll be fair and open.
About Joel?
We love to hear more. Joel will not be.
Joel's
Don't tar Joel with that brush. Don't tar Joel with that brush. Yeah.
Is the orange a secret sign?
No, I feel like that's possibly equally unlikely.
Thank you, Tim. It's been great to have you on. I'm hopefully get you on before the election.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks to you.